2023 gave us South Park's most controversial season in years, in the form of Season 26. I loved Season 25 for feeling like a brand new era of the show, focusing more on the boys again, and including supporting characters that, prior to the season, started to feel like they only existed to fill out the background, instead of, being actual characters. The stories, while not pushed to their limits, felt kinda nostalgic, and it's something I wanted more of after years of serialization. In spite of my appreciation for all that though, I couldn't help but notice that Season 25 didn't really lean into current events all that much, save for one episode, Back to the Cold War, which ended up being one of the weaker episodes of the season. But in the grand scheme of things, Season 25 was just a warm-up, because Season 26 came out with guns blazing from start to finish, firing shots at everybody. Kanye, Prince Harry and Meghan, ChatGPT, Andrew Tate, Logan Paul, Woke Hollywood, Big TP. Nobody was safe, which led to South Park dominating headlines on a fairly consistent basis, stirring up controversy just like in the good old days. And I'm sure South Park's complete takeover of TikTok also contributed to it. So now that the season's all said and done, I wanted to do a deep dive into Season 26 and give my detailed thoughts on everything it has to offer, from the parallels between Cartman and Kanye to the commentary on Logan Paul's influence over kids. With all that said, let's dive right on in.
Yeah, so Hitler actually wasn't a bad guy. Yeah, whoa, Cupid Ye, that's going a bit too far.
The season premiere, Cupid Ye, follows Cartman trying to keep the mini-me on his shoulder in check while trying to sabotage Kyle and Token's friendship. Because now they make TikToks together. It's real. Look it up. Hasn't been updated since this episode, but it's there. Since we've last seen Cupid Me, he's changed his name to Cupid Ye, and he's feeding Cartman anti-Semitic rhetoric that Cartman tries to pass off to Tolkien. But as Cupid Ye becomes increasingly unhinged, Cartman tries to convince him to take his meds. Wonder who this is about. Things hit a breaking point as Cupid Ye goes on a rampage before Cartman eventually succeeds in getting him to take his meds. Meanwhile, Kyle gets put through the ringer as everyone actually believes he runs Hollywood, accumulating in a speech that boils down to, you can't control what people say, but you can look into the things you're being told. Make that Google search, dude! The crowd is so moved by his speech that they think he should run Hollywood.
You know what I think? I think this kid should run Hollywood.
Yeah!
While the commentary on Kanye was right on the money, what I really loved about this episode was its character work. They could have just stopped at Kanye's anti-Semitic, Cartman's anti-Semitic, but they actually went a step further and used this parallel to comment on Cartman's mental health. We all know he's the devil incarnate, but how much of his terrible behavior is the result of him needing help? He's a kid after all. A kid who killed his father and fed him to his stepbrother, but a kid nonetheless. So him getting medicated and working on himself is a huge step in the right direction. Too bad it won't be reflected in future episodes, probably. I loved seeing Kyle and Token hang out more, giving us some tension between the boys and changing up their dynamics. Stan's jealous because his best friend and his now neighbor are hitting it off, the two people he assumably hangs out with the most nowadays. He feels isolated, and I find that really interesting. And we're able to get rainy moments that don't overshadow the whole episode with a Integrity Farm subplot.
Can we just admit this whole woke thing isn't working?
Woke thing?
Now it's like every movie and every TV show,
God damn it, I do not run Hollywood!
As someone whose favorite run of South Park episodes is from the 2000s, where the kids got into insane, supernatural, or sci-fi situations, this episode delivered, and it paved the way for another entertaining season.
The queen died like 4 months ago. You gotta let it go.
Yeah, not to take back what I just said, but this is my least favorite episode of the season. It's not bad, it's just built around the same joke for 20 minutes. The Prince of Canada and his wife have left the royal family and seek out a private, quiet life in South Park, moving into Cartman's old house, so they can make it loud and clear that they really want privacy. Yeah, sure. Most of the episode is Kyle beefing with Canadian Prince Harry and Meghan as they insist they want privacy, but are so clearly begging for attention. There really isn't much to say about the episode. It's funny, but the reaction to it was a lot more interesting. People were waiting for Harry and Meghan to respond. There were rumors that they were greatly offended by the episode and were even planning on suing, although a spokesperson for the Duke and Duchess of Sussex claimed that it's all frankly nonsense, totally baseless, boring reports. Well, damn. I think the problem for me is that with other episodes in this season, there's at least one crazy scene to help it stand out: Cupid Ye branching beyond Cartman's imagination, Randy getting shot, Kenny's once-in-a-decade unhooded appearance, and so on. This just kinda peaks halfway through because they never up the ante. Make fun of Harry and Meghan, please, but give us something to be entertained by beyond that. Yeah, I got nothing else with this one, but I'm glad they took advantage of Cartman's house being vacant while him and his mom live in a hot dog.
Down with the motorhead! Windows over privacy!
With a Japanese toilet, you don't need toilet paper. The toilet washes you completely clean.
The reaction to this week's episode of South Park has been pretty mixed. Some enjoyed it, some felt like it was a mid-Randy episode. Which is a shame, because not only did I like Japanese Toilet, I think it may have actually set up the season finale, while also providing a few memorable gags, and their take on Hogwarts Legacy, or lack thereof. Let's talk about it. The theme of season 26 so far, at least from these first 3 episodes, seems to be all about the influence celebrities have over people, and how celebrities are just as prone to being idiots as everyone else. Cupid Ye debunked the insane notion that Jewish people run Hollywood, an idea perpetuated by Kanye. The Worldwide Privacy Tour was all about self-victimization, and how a celebrity constantly broadcasting their need for privacy will only draw more attention to them. And now Japanese Toilets points out people who try to pass off flexing as awareness, while revisiting the topic of conspiracy theories. I know a lot of people weren't big on this episode as it was once again focused on Randy, but as someone who's been pretty vocal about the Integrity Farm seasons being a low point for the show, I actually think this episode was pretty solid. Got a lot of good laughs out of me. Randy has felt like Matt and Trey's insert for quite some time, but there's a level of self-awareness here that carried the bit for me. Like, come on! Randy portraying the Marches as a highly respected family who holds significant influence over the town, even though he's just a goofy little guy constantly getting himself into trouble. They're talking about themselves! I definitely got the vibe one of them recently bought a Japanese toilet of their own, as Randy does in this episode to replace Old Blue. But his fascination with his overpriced shitter leads to him broadcasting it to the town, inviting as many people over as possible, just so they can use the toilet and be blown away by how cool it is. But once Stan starts to face backlash from his father's gloating, Randy claims that he's just trying to make a change, ultimately falling back on the idea that he's showing an alternative to constantly using toilet paper. But it doesn't take long for things to backfire, as a visit from Randy's proctologist quickly unravels into bro beefing with toilets. Because the toilet prevents hemorrhoids, the proctologist is losing Randy's business.
I never realized you made so much money off my ass.
Things go from 0 to 100 when Jimmy enlightens Stan with the cold hard facts around America's use of toilet paper. And when I say facts, I mean everything he says really is factual. 70% of the world really doesn't use toilet paper, and over 31 million trees are cut down annually to produce toilet paper. Jimmy believes that Big TP wants to suppress information around affordable smart toilets because of how many corporations profit off of not only toilet paper, but as we just saw, the issues that can arise in our bum from using toilet paper. It itches. He also barely stutters while going on this huge tangent, which kinda made it funnier for me. I don't know, I'm a simple guy. Whenever South Park rolls out the live action stock footage, I'm already giggling. Evidently, Jimmy was right on the money, as Randy gets sniped on stage when attempting to spread his truth to the town. It's apparent that Big TP really is lurking in the shadows, trying to cover up the benefits of smart toilets and bidets for their own benefit. They even came after Jimmy 2 years ago for his article in the school newspaper on them. This episode has kind of an abrupt end, as Stan tries to take a stand against Big TP, but Randy quickly shuts it down as he's already been shot and doesn't want things to escalate any further, backtracking on everything he said about toilet paper, even breaking the fourth wall to do so. I definitely think Big TP is a stand-in for any industry that pushes back against cleaner, healthier alternatives in order to protect their bottom line. I'm sure the oil industry will come to mind for a lot of people, as you could easily swap out smart toilets for electric cars. But it's pretty versatile commentary. I also think Randy being quick to back off of Big TP after getting shot, whereas Stan was emboldened, serves as a commentary on how Matt and Trey themselves have changed over time. They're willing to make direct fun of Kanye or Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, but the older they get and the more they have to protect, a line's gonna be drawn somewhere, especially when violence is involved. Poking the bear isn't always an exciting dare for them anymore. which very much reminds me of the infamously censored speech in 201 on how people can use violence to get whatever they want. Funny enough, I just posted a video around a big plot twist in 201 about Scott Tenorman being Cartman's brother. Check it out if you haven't already. Alright, something else I wanted to talk about was the show's acknowledgement of Hogwarts Legacy. I won't lie, I completely expected South Park to take on the controversy surrounding the game in a big episode, but they kinda just ended up taking it on by not taking it on. We just have a quick gag of Randy playing the game, while Stan waits for his turn to play, knowing that turn probably isn't coming anytime soon. Personally, I think this understated way of talking about the game was the right way to go. On one hand, they probably just didn't want to build an entire narrative around the topic, and on the other hand, they know people are going to play the game if they really want to. And having Randy be the one that's invested in the game makes sense, because Randy is definitely the kind of guy to go, but it's Harry Potter, if you try to lecture him about the ethics behind playing it. I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, but choosing Hogwarts Legacy as the game Randy's playing felt like a deliberate choice. Looking back on it, this was definitely my favorite episode of the season, which is ironic given how much I've bitched and moaned about Randy-centric episodes in the past. But this didn't really turn into another Integrity Farms episode, and I love how intense, yet silly, an episode about lobbying got, especially when the lobbying in question is about toilet paper. One last thing I wanted to touch on before dipping. I'm assuming a lot of you guys are caught up to speed on the whole lawsuit situation between Warner Discovery, Paramount, and South Park. But for the uninitiated, Warner Discovery had a $50 million exclusivity deal with Paramount to have new episodes of South Park released on HBO Max the day after premiere. However, part of this deal was 3 10-episode seasons, which South Park and Paramount haven't been honoring because Paramount Plus ordered 14 South Park movies for their own service. So to balance the workload, South Park has shortened their newer seasons to only 6 episodes, so that the remaining 4 can go to Paramount Plus for their specials, delivering 2 specials a year. So since HBO Max is only beginning a fraction of the episodes they were promised, and apparently they were supposed to get the post-COVID specials as regular episodes, they're now taking legal action. However, Paramount has stated that these claims are without merit, and that Warner Discovery has refused to pay the licensing fees for the newer episodes. It makes me wonder what the future of South Park is going to look like, and if they're going to return to 10-episode seasons in order to honor that deal, or maybe even extend the current season by a few episodes. Alright, so, while the lawsuit seems to be ongoing, there was an update a few months ago, and basically, the judge seems to be leaning in Paramount's favor. It's not looking too good for Warner Discovery in this case, which blows for them, because that company absolutely needs a win. Oh well, the streaming wars are trash, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. This entire situation is wild, especially because of the streaming wars special that dropped last summer, which was pretty on the nose in its commentary, portraying Paramount Plus as the villain in the situation by making PP the antagonist of the special. I mean, come on, his name is PP. The initials of Paramount Plus? It's not subtle.
Chat GPT, dude.
AI is pretty much everywhere right now. We have AI presidents playing games together.
All I'm hearing is someone who's mad that their mom got absolutely railed just minutes ago.
We have AI art impressing middle schoolers and people who still use Facebook. This dinosaur only has one fucking arm. We even have AI anime, which is the only time I've seen people dick ride CGI.
Screw you guys. I'm a guy.
There's a lot of concern about the direction AI is going in. If it's going to make jobs obsolete, or if it's going to be abused to spread misinformation, causing further division among people.
You wouldn't want a little ratatouille guy up there doing whatever?
It's honestly insane that a rat would even be able to cook in the first place.
He doesn't have to be cooking.
In the movie, he's cooking.
But then there's South Park, asking the real hard-hitting questions. Like, can I use this to text my girlfriend back for me? I think this was another banger of an episode. Let's talk about it. First off, I gotta say, I love the foundation for this episode because it plays into the depth these characters have, but we don't always get to see. Basically, Bebe is showing off the super sweet, thoughtful text that Clyde has been sending her, wrapping him up as an amazing boyfriend, which makes Wendy feel super insecure because Stan only responds to all of her texts with a thumbs up. And not even the emoji, just the little reaction. Bro making her look like she's talking to herself. Side note, am I the only one who cracks up when the show has these really detailed renders? Like, Clyde's photo on Bebe's phone got a good laugh out of me, and I think it's that simple realism to it without deviating from the show's simple art style. This episode had a lot of great expressions in general, though. Wendy obviously feels like Stan doesn't care about her or isn't interested in her, which we should know isn't true, because it was established 20 years ago in Season 7's Raisins that Stan is absolutely terrible at communicating with her. Back then when he dumped him because he hadn't spoken to her in weeks. But it clearly was not a malicious intent. Bro was confused. He just has a very poor understanding of how romantic relationships are supposed to work. Which makes sense because he's 10 years old. His relationship with Wendy is supposed to be one of, if not the aspect of the show, that reminds us that these are still just dumb kids. Even if they are way more observant of the world than most of the adults around them. He knows he likes Wendy. He knows he enjoys spending time with her, and he knows that they have a connection. They align with a lot morally, but he doesn't understand her needs. Like most kids, and hell, even adults, he doesn't get that he has to listen to his partner's problems and make her feel like she's actually being understood. Also, yeah, men just don't listen to women because they think they're annoying, even when they like them. And they're wrong! Which is made all the more apparent when Clyde confides to Stan that he's not actually writing any of those texts to Bebe, but instead has ChatGPT write the text for him. With this knowledge passed on to Stan, he starts using it to respond to Wendy. And although it's working out great for him at first, the cracks start to show pretty early on when Wendy calls him expecting a bedtime story. But where things really start to escalate is when Stan starts using the AI for his schoolwork, as he starts to realize that Clyde, Butters, and Cartman were all using ChatGPT for their homework. And Cartman's pissed that Clyde told Stan because he's ultimately afraid of Mr. Garrison catching on to the grift. Granted, Garrison basically does find out, but it goes over his head since he immediately focuses on how this can make his job easier. I love the bit with this Gen Z kid walking in the bathroom when they talk ChatGPT, clearly wanting to know what's going on. Things really start to blow up in Stan's face when Wendy takes him out on a date to thank him for his improvement in communication because Stan realizes that Wendy wasn't just complaining to him about nothing. She opened up to him about some pretty heavy shit that happened to her when she was 6. And he doesn't even know a single detail. Also, need I remind you, they're only 10! Stan realizes that by letting technology speak for him, by not putting in any real effort, the relationship has lost its authenticity. But again, because Stan does actually care about Wendy, it crushes him. And to make matters worse, Mackie announces that the school has hired a company to figure out which students have been using OpenAI for their schoolwork. And while I got a kick out of the technician being this weird-ass druid with a falcon, I'm disappointed they didn't poke fun at the dipshit narc who created GPT-0 in the first place. You don't think the nerd emoji strolling in wouldn't be a little funny? Anyways, the druid puts both Wendy and evidently the writers in a corner, as Stan confesses he's not creative enough to think of a way out of this. And in a resolution that's kinda reminiscent of the vaccination special, Stan uses ChatGPT to fix the situation for him, pleading that AI should be something that everyone has a chance to use, while also convincing Wendy that a thumbs up from a human is better than a lie from a machine. While I think this was a pretty clever ending, it was also a cop-out. And this ending, coupled with something else in this episode, kinda makes me wonder, what the hell is happening behind the scenes? Not only is this the second episode in a row to have an abrupt cop-out ending, but it's the second episode in a row where Matt's characters barely have any dialogue. I don't think there's anything too juicy to this. Matt and Trey are probably just sick with some kind of cold. All of their characters sound off, but with Cartman especially, you can hear Trey losing his voice. Just listen to the bathroom scene.
Yes, we are all using it, and we had a pact that we wouldn't tell anyone else because then Mr. Garrison will figure it out.
Their vocal cords are fighting for their lives. I think my boy Johnny Two Cellos will have a bit more to say on this than I do, so peep his video when it drops. But them fighting through a cold would definitely explain the abrupt endings and limited voices from Matt. They still have to get these episodes out on a weekly basis and probably have no flexibility in their schedule. I feel kinda bad for them. And if you didn't figure it out, ChatGPT wrote the ending of this episode, which is why it has a lot of older catchphrases from the characters, like Mackie's excessive use of "okay" and Cartman calling Stan a
damn cheese
instead of Kyle. There's also a special thanks to Play.ht for AI voices. Conclusion. With all that said, South Park's stance on AI is pretty clear after this episode. It can be a genuinely helpful tool for people, as they said, like a good writer's assistant, which I inferred as an admission of using AI to bounce ideas off of each other when neither Matt nor Trey can come up with anything. Whether we like it or not, AI is here to stay. And if we reject it entirely, big corporations will just continue to use it to have an unfair advantage. But in any circumstance, it can't do all the work for you, or it will blow up in your face. Me personally, I get why AI is scary, especially when it comes to the workforce. Whether that be food service, the fine arts, or entertainment, the idea that a robot can replace your hard work while saving the corporate overlords millions of dollars is terrifying. It's a whole different ballpark from being able to make a funny little video where Trump and Biden debate Kingdom Hearts.
That's the sleeping realm theory, Sleepy Joe. It's all of us sitting around theorizing how you could like such a trash fucking game.
You're out of your mind.
But this episode also makes a great case for why a full-scale takeover wouldn't be feasible. No matter how you slice it, AI can't replace human authenticity. You need to have that human touch and that human oversight, because AI will be riddled with inconsistencies and make mistakes. I mean, come on, artificial is in the name, people. That alone should tip you off that it'll never be as reliable as the real deal. The future of AI is in our hands, and all I can really ask for is that we use it wisely. Dude, she's texting me again? Wait.
DikinBaus Hot Dogs is sure to be a big hit here in town.
We just saw Kenny unhooded for the first time in years. Mr.
They took our jobs!
returns, and Cartman's back in his old house against his will.
I want DikinBaus!
This episode was stacked with so much, let's talk about it. The penultimate episode of South Park Season 26, DikinBaus Hot Dogs, or the episode's real title, DikinBaus Hot Dogs, takes on the issues occurring in the current job market by having Cartman represent both the employer and the employee. After learning Butters is able to pick up a job at a local ice cream joint to help out the owner, a pretty wholesome and well-intentioned endeavor, Cartman gets jealous and wants a job there as well, longing for his own source of income simply because it's something one of his friends have that he doesn't. And soon after getting the gig, he gains bigger aspirations and wants to open up a restaurant of his own.
What does that old fart even do?
Eric, could you please fill this nice lady's order?
Oh yes, let me get that for you, Massa, right away now.
Cartman takes advantage of the people he works for by slacking off, working from home despite the job being an ice cream parlor with no remote positions, and he's taking mental health days without notice. Never mind the fact that he's Cartman, so he's obviously going to be someone who doesn't use mental health days in good faith. He also tries to take advantage of the people he wants to employ, getting annoyed when potential employees try to pull the same moves on him.
But I'll need mental health days off to deal with the toxic environment.
Where do people get this stuff?
He refuses work from home and mental health days to Daryl, even though Kenny is shortly seen working from home for a mental health day. He even denies Scott a 5-minute break for his insulin.
This is a goddamn restaurant, you guys. There's no time for diabetes.
Brutal. My favorite aspect of this episode was, without a doubt, the unexpected heapings of continuity. It was truly insane. They loaded so many callbacks into this seemingly random episode. Seasons 25 and 26 have definitely had more callbacks than previous seasons, but this episode really stood out because of it. Leanne and Cartman's conflict is built off Cartman screwing his mom out of her real estate job back in last season's City People, which led to them having to live in this abandoned Coney Island hot dog spot, as it was the only place Leanne could afford. After some brutal honesty from his mother, Cartman references Cupid Ye by asking his mom if she runs Hollywood with Kyle, saying she sounds just like him. Steven's highly specific accusation of Butters lying about his job so he can really go to a gay bathhouse is of course a reference to the iconic Butters' very own episode, one of my favorites of that classic era. I love how Steven is clearly projecting his bi-curiosity onto his son, only to end said projection by leaving for the White Swallow.
I'm gonna go to the office and get some work done!
But what I'm sure will take the cake for most people as this episode's strongest callback was the return of Daryl Weathers as he applies for a job at DikinBaus.
Then I worked over at Waffle House, but they decided they needed employees to be more inclusive, so they took my job.
His role here wasn't too different from the few speaking lines he's had since his debut in Goobacks, popping in to say the line, but it got a good laugh out of me all the same. You can't talk about the job market without involving the guy associated with South Park's working class, after all. The moment really wrote itself. With so many callbacks in this episode, I was half expecting Kenny to die from laughter again. Most people caught on to this before the episode even aired, but the concept of Cartman, Kenny, and Butters reopening the Coney Island is a nod towards Matt and Trey buying the real-life Casa Bonita back in 2021. Yes, that Casa Bonita, smack dab in Colorado, that the show loves so dearly.
The Casa Bonita is gone! Jesus, help us!
It shut down in 2020 during the shitstorm that was the pandemic, so Matt and Trey took it upon themselves to save the restaurant with its grand reopening set for May 2023.
We got a present.
We got an opening day!
We got an opening day!
It's gonna be on May.
What? We're opening this May?
This May.
We're opening in May!
All right, we're opening in May, everybody! Feliz Navidad!
I actually really want to go out of my way to make the trek to Colorado just to try Casa Bonita, earn my credentials as a hardcore South Park fan, you feel me? Hope the food's good. Casa Bonita is also known to be a bit gimmicky, so the upgrades Cartman made to DikinBaus in order to service his own quality of life was also in reference to this pink palace of a promised land. I also love how Cartman and Kenny end up being less focused on the money and become more concerned about using the whole experience to make as many DikinBaus jokes as possible, leading to the restaurant's extravagant name, DikinBaus, which I'm pretty sure is a wink at Doghouse, a chain available in California, Colorado, Arizona, Illinois, Texas, and a few other states. Haven't tried it yet, but their Instagram makes the food look fucking amazing. Oh my goodness. And look at that bio, that's so quirky. Isn't that so quirky? An aspect of this episode that I found really interesting is that it illustrates just how different Cartman treats Kenny and Butters. We see Cartman scheme with these two a bunch separately, but not that often do we see all three together. And it's clear that Kenny really is his best friend, while Butters is his glorified pawn. Kenny reaps all the benefits from Cartman's finessing, while Butters is the one getting finessed. All of Butters' money goes towards investments in DikinBaus, but he's yet to see an actual profit because Cartman is dragging his feet on getting the ball rolling with business. Cartman actually cares to have fun with Kenny, having a ball during their ventures, whereas he couldn't care less about Butters' happiness and just wants to keep the poor boy in check so he can continue to get his way and maintain the business. Don't get me wrong though, there's plenty of moments where Cartman's still shitty to Kenny.
Can you imagine what it's like for him? Watching rich white boys like you just collecting paycheck after paycheck while he wallows in the filth of his tiny house?
Ultimately, Butters ends up putting his foot down and opens the business for Cartman, doing all the hard work for him, just so he can finally make his money back. Also, I don't know if I was the only one who caught this or was amused by this, but I can't ignore the way these CGI hot dog buns are animated as Butters lays them down on the table. I've never seen a bun this bouncy before. I don't know why these are the things I find joy in. Let's switch gears and talk about the birthday boy. Kenny's role in this episode was unexpected, as he was kept out of most promotional material, which painted it strictly as a Cartman and Butters adventure. Yet he ended up being the third most pivotal character in the entire episode. And I wonder if that's because this episode aired on March 22nd, 2023. Kenny's birthday. I mean, come on. They treated Kenny so well in this episode. Not only was this one of the episodes where we can hear pretty much all of his dialogue clearly, with said dialogue being fully transcribed in the subtitles, but we also got to see our boy thriving and unhooded during the working for a living montage, enjoying the good life, and tasting mustard with Cartman. You know, Cartman may have been a douchebag as usual, but at least Kenny got some dubs out of it, with the biggest dub potentially being off screen. But hold that thought for a second. The episode wraps up with Butters deciding to sell the business behind Cartman and Kenny's backs, screwing over Cartman in the process as Butters collabs with Leanne to take care of the tenant aspect of selling DikinBaus. The new DikinBaus owners pay for Cartman's old house, though I was a bit disappointed we didn't see the prince and princess again, given that they bought this house a few episodes ago. But nevertheless, the status quo has reverted back to normal for Cartman. He's back in his old digs, even if he's miserable about it. Kinda makes me wonder if Stan and the Marshes will stay on Integrity Farms, given that Stan's been vocal about his disdain for living there, and this season has already scaled back on Integrity Farms heavy, not even involving much of it in Randy's episode. It'd be cool if Randy made enough money off Integrity to just buy his old house back and let the fam decide where they want to live. and suddenly Randy's the only one living on the farm. Also, I love the South Park realtor picture on the sold sign of Cartman's house, with the agent still striking that goofy-ass pose. And although I'm glad to see Butters walk away from this with a win, what about Kenny? I'm assuming Butters was able to get a pretty good deal out of selling DikinBaus, and although he's fine screwing over Cartman, who still got his old house out of this, Kenny was also a co-owner. And I don't think Butters would hold the same animosity towards Kenny that he does at Cartman. Butters would be way more understanding of Kenny's situation and recognize that he was going along with Cartman's plans but not actively conspiring with him. So I think it's reasonable that Kenny would see a chunk of the money that came from selling the restaurant. Basically, what I'm asking is, did Kenny just get rich on his birthday? I think so. Or at the very least, I would love to see it. The episode wrapped itself up pretty fast, so although it wasn't mentioned here, I could easily see it being addressed in a future episode. Wouldn't be the first time South Park has done something like this. I just want to see Kenny have a win, man. After everything he's been through, I think finding his way into a buttload of money would be more than deserved, while also adding insult to injury when it comes to bruising Cartman's ego. We know from the post-COVID specials that Kenny does become a rich and successful scientist in the future, even after the timeline was altered. So this episode could be setting that up, with him amassing enough funds to go to a really nice college, or even start cooking up some crazy inventions now while he still has his youth. Either way, the seeds are being planted for this future to come to fruition. And we'll definitely see DikinBaus pop up again, whether that be in another episode, a special, or even as a location in the upcoming third video game. So I'm sure we'll get the status of Kenny's possible fortune sooner than later.
Spring break! Spring break! Spring break! I'm just trying to combat the messages that the liberal left is putting out to young men about their male instincts being toxic.
Sounds too gay.
Well, they finally did it. South Park finally made fun of Andrew Tate. Except his name isn't Andrew Tate, but he looks just like Tate, but he doesn't sound like Tate. Let's break it down. Season 26 has already come to a close with its 6th episode, Spring Break, an episode that at its core proposes a question a lot of South Park fans already had. What's going to happen to Garrison as a character if Trump runs for president again in 2024? And the answer, as Rick says, is that we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Although, as soon as I started recording this video, Trump just got indicted in real life, which means this episode either had the best timing or the worst timing. Side note, but I definitely think this title is just a smidge meta with how the show has been releasing over the last year or so, with some content in the beginning of the year, followed by a spring hiatus, before ramping up again in the summer with the Paramount Plus specials. Basically a wink at the audience while also letting us know that they'll be back with more in a few months. Anyways, for those who need a refresher, Season 20 of South Park lined up perfectly with the presidential election of 2016. With this season featuring an ongoing storyline, Matt and Dre decided to poke fun at Trump by having Mr. Garrison as a stand-in. Fake tan, blonde wig and all. However, what was clearly supposed to be a running joke contained to a single season ended up becoming a bigger part of the show, as it was clear Matt, Trey, and the team behind South Park was confident Hillary would win, writing Season 20's storyline accordingly. So when Trump won in real life, Garrison won in the show, remaining president in universe for the next 4 years, basically becoming a non-character who seldomly appeared. Until the vaccination special, where he was back to being regular old Herb. And since then, up until this episode, I don't think they ever addressed the fact that he was president. But what they did do was give him a new boyfriend in Season 25, with Rick being introduced in Pajama Day. Garrison shoves the relationship down his students' throats, despite none of them being even remotely interested in his love life. And at the time, he didn't even break things off with some other dude he was seeing, Marcus. And Rick's been around ever since. Honestly, Rick's pretty amusing as a character, as he's just the straight man to all of Garrison's antics. Wait, is straight man the proper terminology? This episode sees Garrison's Trump era collide with his relationship, as he and Rick indulge in a little spring break vacation in Myrtle Beach, Rick voicing his concerns over Garrison slipping back into his old ways. The way it's all phrased is clearly supposed to sound like Garrison wants to hit up a swinger club or something, but in actuality, it's a MAGA store, full of people still rallying and hoping for Garrison to make a comeback. Watching Garrison fail to resist temptation got a few laughs out of me. I love how Rick calling him in the middle of a rally mirrored Marcus calling him back in Pajama Day. And this kind of relapse makes perfect sense for his character. Bro hates the idea of being alone and is neglected by his students despite trying so hard to make them care about him in his personal life. and Trump fanatics are crazy. Okay, I want to make an addendum to this statement because of how overly sensitive of a topic politics can be, even with South Park. I really don't care who you vote for. I don't know you, you don't know me. The United States is cooked either way. Doesn't matter who it is or their political party. Trump is just the most notable, recent example of someone who cultivated a true cult-like following, and yeah, those people are crazy. I'd say it'd be no different than Biden supporters, but come on, what supporters does he really have? So of course their undying loyalty for their idol would be the perfect drug for Garrison. An unlimited supply of love and attention that he can be showered in for the rest of his life. But as Rick points out, and as Garrison knows, it's a hollow endeavor. These people don't care about Garrison as a person. They just care that he says the things they want him to say. He regurgitates their talking points, and they worship the ever-living shit out of him. Even more so, they just want to rally. They want to feel important and feel as if they're fighting against some great injustice in America, which is why they're still clinging on to Trump, Garrison, and are holding out for a re-election. Because fiction will always be more exciting than reality, and a lot of these people have nothing going on otherwise. Yeah, I have a feeling a lot of Trump supporters are not gonna like this episode. Garrison wants to resist the urge to rally for the sake of his relationship, as Rick truly detests everything about Garrison's president era, recognizing that these people are just dragging Garrison down with them. But we see Garrison given to temptation over and over again. Rick puts his foot down after Garrison blows off their beach day, and you think the physical toll all the rallying takes on Garrison's body would keep him sober. But when tempted by a Trumpy in the bathroom stall, he caves. Rick catches him in the act and decides to head back to Colorado, heartbroken and at his limit. This leads to a surprisingly emotionally charged moment where Garrison makes a big speech about love and the importance of relationships at a rally. How relationships are integral for people because they hold us accountable, especially when battling against addiction. Garrison apologizes to Rick for his constant betrayal, and he wants to make things right. And of course, his declaration of love fires up the crowd and causes the rally to spin out of control, leading to another storming of the Capitol with the use of actual footage from the insurrection. So if you've been waiting for South Park to talk about that, there it is, I guess. Garrison returns home and tells Rick he never wants to go through any of that again. But as we said earlier, Rick tells him they'll just have to wait and see what happens. Of course, right now in the real world, Trump has been gearing up to run for president yet again in 2024. So the best way for Matt and Trey to address this possibility was to recontextualize the storyline as an addiction. And if Trump really does run again, then chances are Garrison will have his biggest relapse yet. Which is a really depressing way to go about it. Classic South Park. But since Trump just got indicted, I'm really curious to see how they'll play it off in the next season. Man, the day after the episode premiered, not even a full 24 hours! South Park got them inspired for real. I feel like this episode and the recontextualization of Garrison's presidency made me really like Rick as a character and care about their relationship. Rick's other appearances made me feel like he didn't actually like Garrison all too much, given that he was straight up using ChatGPT to reply to his text. But now I see it way more as someone who puts up with all this bullshit because he truly cares about him. He wants to help him work through all of his problems, so the two could come out of this stronger together than they were before. I do kind of wish this episode just separated Garrison from Trump entirely, but I'd be lying if I said this wasn't an interesting direction to take his character in. I'm just still burnt from season 20 in general, and the idea of revisiting a concept from one of my least favorite seasons when the show is on a hot streak doesn't sound all that appealing to me. I guess we'll see how this whole Trump situation unfolds before season 27 starts up next year, but all I can ask for is that the show doesn't give the subplot too much focus. I think just one episode to follow up on it like they did here would be enough. But all of that was just the A-plot for the episode. Now it's time to touch on the B-plot, which was centered around Stan and Randy's spring break.
You get my wallet from the upstairs?
Yeah, as soon as we're done with the psycher phase, I have 5 psycher units.
Oh my god, this is so embarrassing.
Sharon and Shelly head to Santa Fe for spring break, while Randy and Stan stay behind. And Randy wants to get wild on spring break.
Spring break! Spring break! Spring break!
Unsurprisingly, Stan just wants to take it easy and play Warhammer 40k for the entirety of his break, which upsets Randy because he's been going through a 23-season midlife crisis and wants to party like a frat boy. So Randy tries to spin this as his son being unknowingly dragged down by society, and that the woke mob wants to suppress their masculine urges. And you know, it's not that his son is a 10-year-old elementary schooler who just wants to play miniature war games with his friends.
Convinced you that your natural, innate male desires are toxic.
Bro, who put Randy onto Hamza videos? Is he a Jeffrey or an Adonis? Let us know in the comments down below. Randy tries to awaken the party animal within Stan and Tolkien by throwing a rager and showering them with strippers, provided by the infamous Romanian sex trafficker, not Andrew Tate. Yeah, again, he looks just like Andrew Tate, cigar, luxury brand jacket and all. But he has a generic accent, limited English vocabulary, and is named Alonzo Fininsky?
That's Alonzo Fininsky, the Romanian sex trafficker!
He's only in 2 scenes, the second of which sees him get in a shootout with the police. The similarities to Tate really end with his design and occupation. Now, I made a video a few weeks ago that absolutely bombed, pitching episode ideas. And in that video, I said that I couldn't see South Park doing an entire episode around Tate, and that something along the lines of Cartman starting an influencer course and dressing up like Tate would be way more fitting. And honestly, I still think that would have been better. Having Walmart Tate here felt like Matt and Trey really couldn't have cared less about the guy, but saw the buttload of requests for an episode on him. But in the process, I feel like they lost everything that would have made Tate entertaining to parody. I'm glad they decided to meet people halfway by having a Tate-esque character pop in during the episode, but it left a lot to be desired. However, given that this current era of South Park has had a knack for bringing seemingly one-off characters or groups back for at least an episode or two, like with the Realtor Agency or the Little Cuties, I wouldn't be surprised if Alonzo Tate makes a comeback in this year's Paramount specials or season 27, especially if Tate gets freed from prison or officially charged while we enter this little spring hiatus. But yeah, while I enjoyed the subplot, there's no denying that it was a little half-baked. With respect, this episode was definitely one where their quick turnaround schedule worked a little against them rather than for them. They definitely cut corners on the production side of things, as all the Warhammer figures were live action, alongside the footage of the insurrection saving some time on animation. Hell, even the cops at the end of that bit were imposed on top of a photo of the White House. Don't get me wrong, that in itself creates a little bit of comedy for me. I don't know, South Park mixing mediums will always amuse me, but they just used these same techniques in Japanese Toilet, which was another episode fans felt was a little half-baked. The jokes here could have been a bit sharper as well. This season making Randy the character who's caught up in the culture war is a funny idea on its own, but that felt like the only joke in the entire B story. I feel like they could have got some great gags out of the strippers also being into Warhammer, leaving Randy dumbfounded. I did enjoy seeing Randy and Steve interact and be civil with each other after Randy declared war on Criger last season. Randy trying to convince Steve that this generation is soft thanks to the idea of toxic masculinity, only for Steven to basically have the same reaction as Stan and Tolkien. There's apparently been discourse lately between new South Park fans and old South Park fans, which is a video all on its own. And how Randy was acting here definitely reminded me of some things I've seen online. This season definitely dialed back on the integrity stuff quite a bit, which I think was necessary. I'd take goofy, immature Randy over integrity. My entire personality is weed Randy any day. And that comes from someone who loves the green. All in all, this episode was solid, but the Garrison story definitely outshined the Randy story. That one just needed another draft. Not the greatest season finale, but I feel like they treat the Paramount specials more like season finales or special events at this point. And I mean, they basically are. And with that, season 26 comes to a close. All things considered, this was still one of my favorite seasons in a while. It's on the same level as season 25 for me. The show definitely needs to keep up this format of being mainly episodic, while incorporating a lot of the show's history into its stories. DikinBaus is probably my favorite of the season, just because Butters and Kenny are two of my favorite characters, and in my opinion it did the best job of incorporating current events into a character-driven story. Alright, before we dive into the specials that technically make up the back half of the season, it's time for a little, massive intermission to talk about some things surrounding season 26, such as Matt and Trey now owning the real-life Casa Bonita, South Park's massive surge on TikTok last year, and why I want to see the return of Scott Tenorman. But if none of those interest you, just skip to this timestamp to get my thoughts on joining the Panderverse and the Not Suitable for Children specials. South Park has been blowing up lately. The series is the most popular it's been in the past 5 years. Odds are, if you're even a casual fan of adult animation, South Park has been creeping up on your feed. But why? Is it the abundance of TikToks, personality tests, and real-life controversies? Is it just because the show itself has been pretty damn good over the last 2 years? Or is it a little from column A and a little from column B? That's what we're here to figure out today. I'm your lovable Tolkien black dude, Ostrich Vox, and it's time to get to the bottom of how this small town in Colorado has captured the hearts and the short attention spans of a new generation. Also, who's your favorite South Park character? I grew up with Butters as my number one, but over time, I've become more of a Kenny guy. Let me know your fave or even top 3 in the comments. I want to start with the most obvious factors at play, the TikTok effect. Short-form content is a part of pretty much every big social media app right now, and with that comes a lot of free advertisement for shows and movies. You know what I'm talking about. The endless supply of Family Guy funny moments atop of mesmerizing mobile games. Rick and Morty episodes broken up into 10 parts like it's 2007. The out-of-context BoJack Horseman quotes that make me worry for media literacy. No, stop idolizing the talking horse, what are you doing? What easier way to get clout than to just slap subtitles on a cartoon in a recycled format that bozos like me will watch over and over? And now the limelight belongs to South Park. Since at least the start of the year, a ton of South Park clips that fit into this mode have flooded apps like TikTok, being met with tons of success. They've accumulated millions of likes and views at this point, exposing more people to the show who may not have checked it out otherwise. Don't believe me? Take a look at Family Guy, or more specifically, this Google trend chart for Family Guy, adjusted to account for the past 5 years. There's a notable peak around September of 2022, way higher than it's ever been. Why do you think that is? Well, last summer is when short-form clips of the series were at their own peak, and season 21 premiered that December. I don't think that's coincidental. I think it's a direct correlation. You can find so many comments along the lines of, I've only watched Family Guy through TikToks, I never actually watched a full episode. People will start watching through these little clips. Soon clips turn into full episodes on Hulu or whatever, and next thing you know, they're unironic fans of the show, even if they don't want to admit it. In South Park's case, the series is available on HBO Max, with episodes being added the day after premiere. And with 26 seasons, newcomers basically hit a gold mine. Funny enough, the season premiere for South Park took some shots at TikTok, calling out the fact that a lot of the videos on there are, fucking weird. But how do you think the TikTok community reacted? Everyone on there loved it, with the scenes getting reposted by every South Park fan under the sun, and even South Park themselves, with an official Kyle and Tolkien account. It also helps that a handful of viral sounds on TikTok over the years have been lifted from South Park, like Cartman talking to creepers on a chat room.
I'm 8.5 inches. Damn, dude, this guy's tiny. He must be a dwarf.
Because naturally people wonder, I wonder what this is from. Seriously, the power of TikTok cannot be underestimated. Even beyond pre-existing media, so many streamers and other content creators have blown up through TikTok, Reels, and Shorts by simply having other people spam highlights from their streams. There's also the simple fact that South Park is a show designed for fandom, even if unintentional. It's very easy to insert yourself into the show's simplistic art style. And South Park sonas have been a thing going as far back as DeviantArt. Now more than ever, I run into videos of people drawing the characters in their own art style, people cosplaying the characters, reviews and essays like the video you're watching right now. While researching for this video, I saw that one of the most searched terms for South Park right now is a personality test. A testament to how many people are getting invested in the show and its characters. I got Kyle, by the way. We're not just seeing clips getting spammed over and over. We're seeing people express their love for the show in different ways. And I just think that's neat. Another big contribution to South Park's resurgence is that the show has finally returned to its original format, after being all over the place for the last few years. I've had some comments get pissed at me for saying this in other videos, but it's no secret that South Park was on a little bit of a decline in the back half of the 2010s. And I say this as someone who's caught every single premiere since 2008, so I know what I'm talking about. Viewership was falling more and more due to the rise of streaming, and the contents of the episodes were not bad, but definitely a far cry from the show's glory days. Especially because, although Matt and Trey really loved the idea of serialization, they just didn't have the best grip on it. And I'm sure they knew this, given that we had an episode straight up called The End of Serialization as We Know It. Nevertheless, South Park was in a little bit of a transitional period over the years. Season 23 was the last time we had a normal 10-episode season for a pretty obvious reason. It aired in 2019. We all know what happened in 2020. Amidst the chaotic state that the entertainment industry found itself in throughout that entire year, South Park only managed to deliver 2 episodes for its 24th season, the Pandemic Special and the Vaccination Special. A refreshing change of pace, as it felt like the kids were finally in the spotlight again, after Randy dominated the show with Integrity Farms for nearly 2 seasons. And season 24 led into the Paramount Plus exclusive post-COVID specials that were set in the future where the boys never repaired their friendship, a highlight of the entire series for sure. After some time travel shenanigans, season 25 arrived on the scene with the newest era of South Park, something I'd even go as far to call the nostalgia era. Season 25 was a shortened 6-episode season that I actually really enjoyed. This season took a step back from long-form storytelling and returned to the basics. The episodes were almost entirely focused on the kids and their own shenanigans, with Randy only appearing in 3 out of 6 of those episodes, Integrity Farms only being relevant in 2 of those. One of which being one of my favorite episodes of the entire series, hands down, The Big Fix, where Tolkien's name was retconned into being Tolkien after J.R.R. Tolkien, having it spun in a way where only the Marsh family was under the impression that Tolkien's name was Tolkien this entire time.
Tolkien, I have something I have to tell you.
Going above and beyond with this bit by changing his name on the subtitles of older episodes, unless his name was being said by Stan. Summer 2022 saw the Streaming Wars 2-parter, which wasn't bad, but it wasn't great either. The strongest parts of these specials were the return of Man Bear Pig, and Randy coming to terms with the fact that Integrity Farms reduced his character to a one-note part of the show. That's not my own words, by the way. Those are actual lyrics from a song in the special. Everything else, especially the stuff with PP, funny on paper, but the execution delivered a relatively mid product. But hey, Paramount Plus was the one who ordered 14 of these things, so you reap what you sow, I guess. Now, I'm not gonna pretend like returning to a purely episodic format means every episode is a 10 out of 10. Some definitely aren't as memorable as others, but it contributes to why the show is blowing up right now, because viewers can once again drop in at any time instead of having to keep up on a week-to-week basis to understand what's going on in this week's episode. And it's not like continuity has dropped from the show completely. Tolkien's name change was accompanied with his father starting Criger Weed, with the family now living across the road from the Marshes. Cartman now lives in a giant hot dog because he screwed his mom out of a job in City People. And Cartman's old house is now occupied by the Prince and Princess of Canada. The Paramount specials seem to be the outlet for Matt and Trey's more ambitious storytelling. And it helps that these specials, despite their continuity, are a much lower commitment to the viewers and creators, as opposed to a full-length season. Another thing I've noticed is that characters that used to appear all the time, but either vanished or became background characters, are now once again appearing with actual lines and story relevance. This is more of an extension to the return of an episodic format and not something I think is blowing up South Park all over the internet, but still worth mentioning. Season 25's Help! My Teenagers Hate Me featured Kenny's dad, Stuart, in a speaking role for the first time since 2018. The teenagers themselves were featured in the show for the first time since 2008. Jimbo had a presence throughout this season in general, after being used sparingly in recent years as well. Hell, Bebe beating the crap out of Butters in Worldwide Privacy Tour was the first time she really played a role in an episode since 2019. And before then, she was pretty much a non-character for the serialized seasons, aside from a few lines in some of the episodes. I think the string of specials in 2020-2021 made Matt and Trey realize how much they missed using this expansive cast of characters, inspiring them to give characters like Tolkien a bigger role in the average episode, while sprinkling in other characters who used to appear all the time. It helps South Park feel way more alive, and reminds viewers that there are tons of characters with fleshed out personalities whose names don't start with Stan, Kyle, Cartman, Kenny, Randy, or Garrison. Okay, I really don't want to state the obvious, but yeah, controversy sells. And controversy is something South Park is really, really good at. While the show never refrained from touching on current events, it's been a hot minute since South Park's really upset a celebrity or a select group of people, until season 26. We're only 2 episodes in at the time of this video, but both have managed to make waves on the internet, even if the second one was kinda mid. The premiere, Cupid Ye, took obvious shots at Kanye through the return of Cupid Me, refusing to actually give Kanye the satisfaction of being directly portrayed on the show again, while still commenting on his actions and hateful rhetoric. And while Kanye himself hasn't made a statement on anything, the episode definitely pushed the buttons of people who agree with Kanye's views. Just check the comments on Johnny or Blooms' videos. The second episode, however, definitely got a big reaction from the people they're taking shots at, as the worldwide privacy tour took the piss out of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. There were reports that Meghan Markle was upset and overwhelmed by their depiction in the episode, and there were even rumors that they were threatening to sue. But a representative was quick to come out and shut all that down. All of this puts even more eyes on South Park. People have always looked at current events and thought, this is going to make a fire episode. But these last 2 have generated a level of buzz that just hasn't been there for a very long time. But when celebrities are getting pissed off at South Park again, you know they finally got their groove back. If you've been keeping up with South Park Season 26, you may have noticed there's a new kid in town, notably roasting Stan for Randy's toilet flexing in the 3rd episode of the season.
Did you know some people can't even afford to eat? How about caring for something that matters, you bitch?
After watching the same cast of characters for nearly 30 years, with the only new additions often being adults, your reaction to this new girl may reasonably be,
who is this bitch?
Well, allow me to explain. This is Betsy, not to be confused with Betsy Donovan, Clyde's late mother. And she's not just some rando, but a clear homage to her voice actress, Betty Boogie Parker. That's right, the daughter of series co-creator Trey Parker. I'm sure a lot of hardcore South Park fans may already know this, but Betty's role in South Park actually goes way beyond Betsy. Despite only being 9 years old, Betty's been involved with the series ever since she was 2. Her notable roles include being the latest voice of Ike Robowski, Heather Williams, who debuted in 2021's South Park Return of COVID, and Chuck Chuck, child of Man Bear Pig, in 2022's South Park The Streaming Wars. There's actually a handful of behind-the-scenes footage of Betty in the booth over on the South Parkers Instagram account, which I think is run by Betty's mom, Boogie.
Let's do, how about caring for something that matters, bitch?
How about caring for something that matters, you bitch?
She puts in you.
But let's talk a bit more about Betsy as a character. Not only was she allegedly designed by Betty, which makes sense, they look exactly alike, but she actually debuted a little before season 26. And by a little, I mean like 2 years. In the South Park Vaccination Special, where she was a part of the Little Cuties, a branch of QAnon full of children who were brainwashed through the curriculum taught at Tutoranon, believing that the vaccine contained mind-controlling microchips courtesy of the Hollywood elites. Other familiar faces a part of Little Cuties include Scott Malkinson, Red, and, unsurprisingly, the impressionable Butters. The Little Cuties not only tried to prevent our boys from administering the vaccine to the teachers at South Park Elementary, but also recruited Clyde in the Return of COVID special. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Little Cuties stick around in the form of the next video game as one of the many forces you have to battle, just with a new goal that isn't tied to the events of 2021. I've also been playing through the games for the first time recently, and just started Fractured Butthole, and seeing that you have to fight not only the 6th graders, but the girls over at Raisins, really got me thinking about groups from recent seasons that could pop up in the next one. But I'm getting a little sidetracked. The point of mentioning all of this is to illustrate that Betsy seems to be a very politically charged character. I mean, come on. She has an American flag patched to her jacket and went off on Stan for being Richie Rich, despite Stan wanting nothing to do with Randy's obnoxious antics. Betsy already seems like a character who genuinely wants to make a change, whose heart is in the right place, but for one reason or another, she ends up fighting for the wrong side. Obviously, these are observations based off of minor appearances, but they're consistent enough to make me think this is the direction they want to take her character in. And I think that makes for a great addition to the cast. Imagine watching Betsy and Wendy at odds over a social issue. Betsy constantly giving Stan shit because he's now a rich kid, even though he kinda rejects everything that comes from that title, aside from the PS5. Cartman trying to rope her into doing his bidding, only for it to backfire as usual. Betsy really seems like a character who can mix up the dynamics of the show and breathe some new life into the kids' elementary school adventures. Although she's only had small roles at the time of recording, her frequent appearances in this new season has me thinking that they're setting the stage for her to play a bigger part in season 27 and beyond.
Fuck yeah!
We can't spend another holiday feeling bad for Eric. There's nothing that could have changed the path he was on.
In 2021, South Park changed the game with 2 specials titled Post-COVID, set in a future where the boys stopped being friends and never found their way back to each other. A future where Stan and Kyle are both alone and kinda miserable, with Stan being a professional drunk.
I'm an online whiskey consultant. I'm doing research.
And Kyle an online therapist. Kenny was a brilliant scientist with a Nobel Prize, but of course he dies, and his death is actually a catalyst for the events of this special. And it turned out Kenny's most ambitious project was a way to go back in time and save the boys' friendship. So I don't think he was all too happy deep down either. The only person who seemed to be happy in this darkest timeline was Cartman. He became a rabbi, believe it or not, and had a whole family, a wife and 3 kids. But after the events of the second special, Return of COVID, in which Stan and Kyle are able to save the boys' friendship through time travel, the fixed timeline saw everyone get a happy, healthier ending. Except Cartman, who wound up a homeless drunk in really bad shape. When I first watched this, I just thought, yeah, that's about right. But to my surprise, there were a lot of people who felt really bad for Cartman, especially because everyone else reached the good ending. Which might say a lot about me as a person. Psychoanalyze me in the comments down below. But yeah, after seeing him happy with a family, I get why this could feel like a bitter note to end on. And the fixed timeline wouldn't even have existed without him. So now that season 26 is over, with its premiere Cupid Ye delving a bit into Cartman's mental well-being, I thought it'd be a good time to take a good look at how Cartman's behavior determines the trajectory of his life and answer the question, does Cartman really deserve his future? Yeah, probably, but like, it's a little more complicated. So I actually do think there's valid reasons for the answer to this question being yes and no. And I think both reasons are fairly obvious. On one hand, Cartman is... Cartman. He is basically the antagonist of South Park, and is a character we're rarely supposed to root for. He's committed more crimes than the US president, the most infamous being the orchestrated murder of his half-brother's parents, in which he proceeded to cook them into chili and feed them to his brother. He's made his mother's life a living hell, to the point where they had to live in a rundown hot dog for a season, and generally just has a tendency to drag down the people around him, while also sabotaging himself. If you broke down every horrible thing Cartman has ever done, him ending up as a homeless drunk being something that's deserved wouldn't even be a debate. On the other hand, he is a child, which doesn't excuse any of the fucked up things he's done. But let's not act like this isn't South Park, a show that exaggerates things to the highest degree in the name of comedy. There is no denying that Cartman's character can be framed as a troubled kid with a mom who has a slew of her own problems, and no father figure present in his life whatsoever. No real connections to any other family members. He has no idea how to express his emotions, and while he struggles with self-sabotaging behavior and impulse control on a daily basis, the very existence of alter egos and hallucinations, such as Mitch, Connor, and Cupid Ye, show that there are deeper problems at play. Problems that I believe Cartman is able to overcome, given that we saw him with a stable family and career. Granted, looks like some of those unsavory qualities of his are genetic.
Fuck you, Cap.
Hakim!
But then that begs the question, what changed Cartman so much in this timeline that he was able to outgrow his bad habits and become a respectable human being? Why does Cartman get better? The answer to this question is just as depressing as the future Cartman's currently headed towards. I believe Cartman is only able to get better when he's completely alone, something that South Park has actually shown us years before the post-COVID special. Back in season 20's Skank Hunt, Cartman hit a low point after he was falsely accused of being the infamous troll Skank Hunt 42, with the boys destroying all of his electronics and dissolving their friendships with them. It's honestly a pretty tough watch, knowing he's not actually King Hunt 42. In the aftermath, Cartman is shown to be pretty miserable as a lone wolf. As PC Principal puts it, he's wandering through the hallways with no connection to the world. Though in the context of the actual episode, it's because he was forced to quit social media. It actually seemed as if Cartman was ready to turn over a new leaf. But one thing threw a wrench into that development. His relationship with Heidi. After losing his friends, Cartman gained a new companion in her as she made amends for falsely accusing him. The two growing closer to one another, and they begin to date shortly after. At first, it seems as if this relationship is bringing the best out of Cartman, as he swears off his old ways much to the boys' surprise, and he even helps Heidi get Troll Trace up and running as a way to counteract cyberbullying. However, the cracks were beginning to show throughout this season as Cartman struggled with being honest about his past behavior to Heidi and was clearly possessive over her as he accused Butters of trying to steal her away from him in the episode Not Funny. And all poor Butters did was agree that Heidi's funny. Although, Butters clearly isn't in the best place either and contributes to Cartman's paranoia.
The truth is, girls hate us, Eric. They're sick of our shit.
He gonna spitting. Season 21 shows a steep decline in Cartman's relationship with Heidi, as he wants her to bend to his every whim just like his mom does. His manipulation and abusive behavior is at its peak, and the end result is sweet little Heidi turning into another Cartman. Truly terrifying stuff. But I think it all goes to show that as long as Cartman has someone who's naive enough to feed into his bullshit and enable his behavior, he just won't grow. It's not that his peers are toxic for him, but for Cartman, any attention is good attention, and without the proper help, he will constantly project his insecurities onto everyone around him and envy his peers for having the things he doesn't have, whether that be a semblance of a stable family, a shiny new PSP, or indulging in child labor. So if being alone is the thing that forces Cartman to grow into a better person, then I think the next question would reasonably be, how? How does loneliness cause Cartman to get better? Since, in the initial future timeline, we never actually see the path Cartman took to end up where he did. And I think it's as simple as loneliness causing Cartman to take a good look at himself and seek help. This is where season 26's Cupid Ye comes into play, as that episode relates Cupid Cartman, aka Cupid Me, Cartman's imaginary friend, to Kanye West, with Cupid Me changing his name to Cupid Ye, and Cartman pointing out that ever since Cupid Ye changed his name and got all into Jesus, he's been acting a little batshit crazy. The resolution to that episode being Cartman forcing Cupid Ye to start medication, turning him back into regular old Cupid Me. Considering Cupid Me is an extension of Cartman, it's not hard to interpret this as Cartman acknowledging that he himself wouldn't be such a hateful, self-sabotaging person if he got help. Now look, although we're talking about a cartoon, I know people can feel some type of way about medication, and I'm not trying to say that medication is the only way someone can get help. I'm just rolling with what this particular episode provided. That being said, Cartman could have become religious and found a community within that religion, given that again, he's a rabbi in the initial future timeline. I don't think there's a clear answer. It could have been a combination of things for all we know. The point is really that his loneliness leads to introspection, which leads to him making a meaningful change. I do think religion could have done a lot for Cartman in general, considering atonement is something practiced in Judaism. And I can see Cartman having a strong emotional reaction to the process of confessing his hefty list of sins and being forgiven for them, which is a very important distinction between this and other times Cartman's almost had a face turn. Because in a situation like his relationship with Heidi, Cartman actively tried to hide his past in the early stage of the relationship and gradually slipped back into his toxic ways. Whereas with religion, he has to be upfront about how much of a little gremlin he is to make any substantial progress. All of this raises one more question. Is it possible for Cartman to improve himself with the boys, to become a better person without losing his squad? And the answer is maybe. I think the problem is that Stan and Kyle in particular have a hard time giving Cartman the benefit of the doubt. Rightfully so. Hell, that was the bit with Cartman and Kyle in the post-COVID special, with Kyle refusing to entertain the possibility that Cartman actually had a change of heart, convinced that this is all an elaborate plan by Cartman to drive Kyle absolutely crazy. While I don't think the boys are inherently toxic for Cartman, I do think that he's dug a hole for himself that makes it hard for the boys to ever take a redemption arc seriously. Which wouldn't be the best vibes for him to be around, should he ever commit to making positive changes. I truly think that Cartman would have to go through something major that would cause the boys to sympathize with him and motivate him to improve as a person. I think the closest we've gotten to that would have been the aftermath of Scott revealing that Cartman killed their dad and turned him into chili. But of course, Cartman ruined that moment by focusing on the fact his dad was a ginger. I do think it's worth mentioning that Cartman becoming homeless does imply that his mom either cut him off or straight up died. Although with her being absent in that initial timeline, I do think it's more likely that she sadly could have passed. Either way, both scenarios would have a severe impact on Cartman, and how he responds would be pivotal in where he ends up. Does he improve himself or wallow in his misery and only get worse? We see that both are possible. So, does Cartman really deserve his future? Well, it depends on if he's willing to get himself help or not. If he does nothing to turn his life around and only contributes to making it worse, the answer is obviously yes. But if he takes the proper steps to turn his life around, then no. But I think in that situation, he wouldn't even end up like this. It is worth mentioning that Cartman started hanging out with Clyde, Jimmy, and who the fuck is this? In the initial future timeline, but I'm not sure how long that lasted given that none of them are like, hey, Cartman, what's up when they reunite. In fact, he gravitates to Stan and Kyle. So I don't know if those friendships lasted all too long, or if they can be used to argue that Stan, Kyle, and Kenny are the ones that hold back Cartman. Now I want to reiterate that this is just a fictional paper cutout, whose life is determined by two middle-aged men. And real life isn't as cut and dry. I know that. Look, I just know the comments on these South Park videos can get kind of intense, which is why I don't read them. I just don't want to go off the impression that I think everything I'm saying can apply to the lives of real people one-to-one. It definitely cannot.
Casa Bonita, food and fun in a festive atmosphere, Casa Bonita. Dude, haven't you ever been there? It's a big Mexican restaurant, but they have like cliff jumpers and Black Bart's Cave and all kinds of stuff.
This is Casa Bonita, a place in Lakewood, Colorado that's the last of its kind, and hailed as the Disneyland of Mexican restaurants. And it's not hard to see why. They have everything you would ever want from a top-tier restaurant experience. They got mariachis. They got cliff divers. They even have a magician. The vibe is basically Rainforest Cafe on steroids. And after shutting down for a little bit in 2020, Casa Bonita is back under new management. But something feels different. Maybe it's the gigantic Cartman statue or Man Bear Pig greeting the guest. Wait, why are Cartman and Man Bear Pig here? Well, funny little story, the South Park creators bought the place. And if that seems a little random, I promise you it's not. In fact, this feels like destiny, dude! South Park has featured Casa Bonita in numerous episodes, and even in one of their games, including the time it was destroyed by Mecha Barbra Streisand.
Casa Bonita's gone! Jesus, help us!
So what's the history between South Park and Casa Bonita? And how did we end up with Cartman's goofy goober ass cheesing at the customers while they eat? Well, get ready for some useless trivia and a trip down memory lane as I unpack how South Park took over Casa Bonita. It all started in 2003 with the season 7 episode appropriately titled Casa Bonita. Well, really, it started whenever Matt and Trey went to Casa Bonita for the first time and became obsessed with it. But for us, it all started here. Now, admittedly, this episode isn't like a Hall of Famer or anything. Honestly, it's just your run-of-the-mill Cartman episode for the time. But the way it ended up changing the trajectory of Matt and Trey's lives cannot be understated. It kicks off with Kyle eagerly informing the gang that his mom is taking him and 3 friends to Casa Bonita for his birthday. And wouldn't you know it, Cartman is a Casa Bonita super fan. Knowing the ins and outs of the place, he's ready to get wild, wanting nothing more than a trip to this paradise. But Kyle immediately grounds him to the sobering reality that they aren't friends, due to the fact that Cartman treats him like shit, and thus the third slot is going to Butters instead. The idea of missing out on a trip to Casa Bonita haunts Cartman. Like, bro is literally having dreams of going there. It's kinda sad, even if I can relate. Shout out to Waffle House. Cartman wants to prove himself as a nice person worthy of going to Casa Bonita with Kyle. But like 2 seconds into this quest, he gives up, he wails on Jimmy, and resorts to gaslighting Kyle and Butters in classic Cartman fashion. He gives Kyle the impression that even though he wants to go, he understands where Kyle is coming from, and doesn't want the situation to affect the squad's dynamic. Of course, Kyle eats this up, appreciates the sentiment, and lets Cartman know that if Butters can't make it, he can take his place. Which is exactly what that bastard wanted. This is where the shenanigans begin. Cartman convinces Butters that a meteor is going to collide with Earth in a matter of hours. And pretending to have Butters' best interest in mind, Cartman helps the lad go into hiding by placing him in a bomb shelter. Good plan in a shitty, evil, fucked up way, right? Wrong. Because Cartman locked up Butters a whole night before the Casa Bonita trip, Butters' parents arrive at Kyle's house moments before they head out. The Stotches are a mess, as they have no idea where Butters could be. And now that everyone is on edge, no one's really in a mood for Casa Bonita. Except for Cartman. Casa Bonita gets postponed for a week while the search for Butters begins, which Cartman thinks will be smooth sailing until...
I say we need to move the search to ducks, wells, and bomb shelters.
But how can Cartman keep Butters hidden for another week if they're checking bomb shelters? Well, when there's a will, there's a way. Running with a post-apocalypse narrative, Cartman moves Butters from the bomb shelter to the inside of a fridge in a garbage dump. Yeah, that's a great idea, Cartman.
Finally, I can breathe. Oh my god.
The next Saturday rolls around, and just as the gang heads to Casa Bonita, Butters gets discovered in the dump, and the truth quickly comes to light.
Oh. Ma'am, can I use your phone?
As soon as they pull up to the function, Kyle's mom gets a call explaining the situation. She informs Cartman the cops are on the way. So this kid just makes a break for it. And wow, even in cartoon form, this place looks nice. I wanna go, what the fuck? Cartman tries to speedrun the Casa Bonita experience while getting chased down by the authorities. And right as it looks like they have him cornered, he goes for the dive. Yeah, that doesn't save him, but hey, he thinks it was all worth it, so despite the week in juvie, Cartman kinda won in the end, I guess? What a disturbed little man.
You are a sad, strange little man.
Again, the episode isn't anything to write home about, although it is one of Trey Parker's favorites according to commentary.
This is definitely among my top 10 favorite episodes of all time.
And it did expose a new generation to Casa Bonita, and set everything in motion for South Park's eventual takeover of the restaurant. To quote Mark Tornga from the AV Club, South Park delivered the best possible commercial for this restaurant adventurescape with the surprisingly accurate and compelling 2003 Casa Bonita episode of the show. Of the 100 or so Google and Yelp reviews I've read about Casa Bonita, a solid half of them mention Cartman or South Park as their motivation for dining. Like the other out-of-towners who chimed in, I too was shocked to find out that Casa Bonita does indeed exist, and almost exactly as it was depicted in South Park. Not only was the Colorado branch anticipating the episode thanks to Matt and Trey actually going up there and getting permission from them directly, but the table Cartman briefly sat at was declared the Cartman table by the restaurant itself. Keep that in mind. Side note, a lot of people claim that Casa Bonita's food was absolute ass back in the day, and I realized that, South Park doesn't touch on its menu once. I wonder if Matt and Trey also thought the food was mid, but just decided to spare the restaurant of any slander in the episode. The events of Casa Bonita would be referenced in the episode Awesome-O, as Butters still held resentment against Cartman for trapping him in a bomb shelter and fridge for a week, rightfully so, Butters. And the restaurant was referenced once more in the episode You Have Zero Friends.
That's right, Clyde has a birthday coming up and his mom is taking everyone to Casa Bonita.
The band episode 201 decided to get bold and have tragedy strike Colorado. Not because Pip's dumbass returned just to get flattened like a pancake by Mecha Barbra Streisand, but because the bitch destroyed Casa Bonita.
The Casa Bonita is gone! Jesus, help us!
Sure, they claim the episode got banned because of Mohammed, but I know the truth. America couldn't handle watching the destruction of a national treasure, even in animated form. Like this was someone's 9/11. Now, the Sick of Truth and Fractured Butthole are heavily implied to be canon, and the latter game has DLC set entirely in Casa Bonita, even though it was still closed in the series. Sadly, I haven't gotten around to this DLC yet, but just looking at gameplay online, I am in absolute awe at how they were able to perfectly translate this restaurant into a fully explorable map. You fight Michael Jackson here for some reason. That's pretty cool. This DLC just shows how much love Matt and Trey have for Casa Bonita, how near and dear this restaurant is to their hearts. I mean, do you see any other game having its developers flesh out a gimmicky Mexican restaurant? I don't. Jumping back to the show, Casa Bonita officially reopened 10 years later in the vaccination special, as Cartman gets an invite there by Clyde. And I'm sure this was Matt and Trey winking at the audience, as Casa Bonita unfortunately shut down in March 2020 as a result of the pandemic, and the owner filed for bankruptcy the following year in April 2021. But 5 months after the vaccination special, Matt and Trey closed a deal to buy the restaurant. Dang, the things you can do with fuck you money. Yeah, the biggest Casa Bonita fans on the planet buying the restaurant is kind of a no-brainer, and I'm sure it was a huge full circle moment for them.
Ever since we started, the building, we have named our office Casa Bonita. It's like fate.
It's like Thanos catching all the stones. You can tell Matt and Trey were hyped to own a restaurant. Given that season 26, which just aired earlier this year, featured the episode DikinBaus Hot Dogs, which saw Cartman and Kenny start up their own restaurant right out of Cartman's hot dog-shaped home. It was clearly a meta-commentary on Matt and Trey's own business endeavors, and even though they didn't acknowledge Casa Bonita in the episode, I wouldn't be surprised if we had a proper follow-up to the original episode sooner rather than later, now that it'll be in the front of Matt and Trey's minds for a while. So, after significant renovations, hiring over 500 people, and partnering with award-nominated chef Dina Rodriguez, so the food's no longer trash, Casa Bonita finally reopened in June 2023. And as we alluded to in the intro, South Park has made its mark on the restaurant in a way that really can't be ignored. It's an absolute takeover, kinda. The Cartman table is now accompanied by a full-blown Cartman statue, immortalizing the menace in a perfect final resting place. Just look at that shit-eating grin. He's so happy to be here. I guess there also used to be a guy in a gorilla suit, SpongeBob style, that's been replaced by Man Bear Pig, which is cute. I don't know about y'all, but I love being greeted by the embodiment of climate change. As it stands, we're relying on people posting their little Casa Bonita TikToks to get a good look at their renovated restaurant and all the South Park additions made to the place. So I'm not sure if they added more than just these two, but honestly, we don't need a bajillion South Park decorations around the restaurant. Too much of that, and you start to lose what makes Casa Bonita special. Though I won't lie, I hope there's at least something like a South Park themed cocktail on the menu. You gotta have something South Park on the menu now. If there's anything to learn from all of this, it's definitely that life is truly unpredictable, and that you should never give up on your passions. Try to incorporate your passions into your work. Matt and Trey did, and look where that got them. Which is why I'm announcing my goal, no, my dream, to one day own the entire Taco Bell empire. With my newfound position, I will bring back the grilled stuffed nacho to every single location. I will make sure nacho fries and the blue raspberry freeze will never leave the menu. And I will restore the dessert menu to its former glory. All I gotta do is just make a hit cartoon that runs for 25 years. How hard can that be in the age of streaming, right? And that's about it, everybody. If you want to learn more about Casa Bonita as a restaurant, I'm gonna be cooking up another video over on my personal channel, Kevin's Rabbit Hole. So go subscribe and be on the lookout for that over the next few days. I'm trying to build that channel out more. And I just posted a banger on the Grimace Shake, so if you haven't checked that out yet, you should.
Scott Tenorman? I'll be back, super best friends!
No, you ain't!
South Park season is upon us once again, folks. And I think it's about time I talk about something that's been on my mind for a while. As someone who's grown up with South Park and caught basically every premiere since 2008, I've seen a lot of characters come and go. We've lost real ones like Chef and, I guess, Pit, while learning new faces like PC Principal and Betsy. And there's the recurring characters who have faded into obscurity like the 6th graders, Jimbo, or Ned, reduced to background characters with little to no speaking roles. Although the RPGs encompassed a lot of South Park's expansive cast of characters with side missions and quick story beats, just one of the many reasons why those games rip. Something cool that we've seen over the past few years is the show itself bringing back characters who haven't had the spotlight in a while. Liu Kim being prominent in City People, Jimbo and Kenny's dad Stuart playing a role in Help! My Teenagers Hate Me! And most notably, Tolkien getting softly upgraded into a bigger character. Although he's not really a part of The Boys, he's shown hanging out with Stan a lot more now that they live directly across the street from each other. A change that I really like. I love seeing the different dynamics these characters have with one another and how those dynamics affect the core friend group. But in spite of all of this, I can't shake the feeling that Matt and Trey are still dodging one character in particular. Someone who plays an instrumental part in one of the most shocking moments in the show's history. Someone who has a major connection to one of the boys. Someone who's only had one other major appearance since his debut. I am of course talking about Eric Cartman's half-brother, the twisted, tormented Ginger, Scott Tenorman. Earlier this year, I covered South Park's infamous two-parter, banned from the United States, 200 and 201. My highest viewed video of the year, by the way. Makes me really happy since that's a video I wanted to do for literal years, so thanks for tuning in. In this banned two-parter, we learned that Cartman's mom actually got knocked up by a player on the Denver Broncos, Jack Tenorman, with the town covering up this juicy secret in order to protect the beloved sports team.
They were having a really good year. There couldn't be any distractions.
So, wouldn't you know it, not only does Cartman have ginger in his blood, but he also murdered his father and the mother of his half-brother, traumatizing said brother for life. You can guess which one Cartman is more f***ed up about.
My dad was a ginger!
Old Scotty Boy had to flee before he could finish exacting his revenge on Cartman. But sadly, Tenorman hasn't been seen in a major role since, presumably due to 200 and 201 being banned, with the latter only airing on TV once. It's a major bombshell that was dropped in a B-plot that's sadly attached to one of the most controversial episodes of the show. Although it's not like it's controversial because it offended viewers across America, it's controversial because Comedy Central was afraid of sparking a world war. Which, if any cartoon was able to pull that off, South Park definitely fits the bill best. Tenorman did make a small cameo in the vaccination special, alongside a presumably non-canonical Xbox game, Tenorman's Revenge from 2012. But the show proper hasn't followed up on 201 in the 12 years since it aired, and I think it's time that's changed. Scott and Eric being brothers is just too good of a twist to let a banned episode hold it back. Honestly, he might have come back already if 201 was never even banned. But it's not too late to make it happen. It's only been over a decade. Literally, all you need to do is have a 10-second recap of 201, followed by a joke where Cartman has no recollection of that happening. I truly think Scott Tenorman becoming a semi-recurring character has a lot of potential, mainly for entertainment value, but also for some Cartman development. I'd even argue the show has the perfect setup to make this happen. But first things first, why Scott? What makes him such a great candidate for a recurring character compared to everyone else who's vanished from the show? Well, in a really messed up way, Scott was kind of everything Cartman tries to be. Prior to the chili incident, he was manipulative and conniving like Cartman, although he wasn't nearly as extreme as Cartman can get. But unlike Cartman, not only was he able to get away with his hijinks without repercussions, but he was able to do so while still maintaining good relationships with his friends and family. You know, until Cartman turned his family into chili. And now that he's had a full-blown Joker arc, the boxing gloves are coming off. He can go completely off the rails and match Cartman's level of insanity, his level of cruelty. And he has a tragic origin story to fall back on for his delinquent behavior because, after all, the fat kid killed his parents. Seriously, what could Scott do to Cartman that would cause people to say anything but, I don't know, Cartman, he killed his parents? The idea of someone being just as evil as Cartman while also being socially accepted is just really interesting to me. In a super messed up sense, he's quite literally the older brother that Cartman aspires to be. Yet South Park has only scratched the surface of what this dynamic is capable of. Although Cartman has had plenty of comeuppances, Scott feels like the only character who could really put Cartman through everything he puts everyone else through. I want to see a B-plot where Scott goes above and beyond to fuck Cartman out of something trivial that he's been really excited for. Maybe Cartman really wants to play Spider-Man 2, but he can't lock down a PS5, only to discover Scott has been putting in the work to make sure that console never ends up in his hands. That's just an example off the top of my head. I'm sure there's something stronger they could come up with, but I hope you see the vision. I also think Scott has the power to really put a nail in the coffin when it comes to Cartman's social standing. I mean, think about it. Despite being an absolute menace to society, people still put up with Cartman. But over the years, the townsfolk have become increasingly fed up with him, especially his mom. If anyone is unhinged selfish enough to set Cartman up to be exiled from the town, yet be completely justified in doing so, it'd be Scott. He has enough of the town's pity to turn Cartman into public enemy number 1 without anyone questioning him for it. I think Tennerman's return would also put Cartman in an interesting position. Does he double down and try to best Scott at this game of cat and mouse? Or does he do the unthinkable and actually try to level with Scott? Make a genuine effort to try and atone for the blood on his hands, connecting with Scott and against all odds, becoming brothers. It's Cartman, so that's beyond wishful thinking, but I don't know. Don't you think that'd be a little interesting to see?
Nigga, no.
Alright, well screw you two then. Now that we have why Scott out of the way, let's tackle how Scott. As in, how would the show bring back Scott in a meaningful way? Again, I think I cooked up a pretty good premise, and it's just connecting the dots that the last 2 seasons laid out. City People revolved around Leanne getting a new job as a real estate agent to keep the Cartman family afloat, much to Cartman's dismay. So he decides to start his own rival agency to put his mom out of a job. People get shot, just another Wednesday in South Park.
Who shot up the school? Was it you?
This is America.
In the aftermath of Leanne caving into Cartman and quitting her job, they can no longer afford their house and have to move into an abandoned hot dog shop that Cartman eventually transforms into DikinBaus Hot Dogs. A smash hit that's sold against his will, and ultimately lands him and Leanne back to square one as they're able to get their house back in the acquisition.
I want DikinBaus!
While that'll cover their living situation for a bit, I'm not sure it's something they can live off of forever. But how can Leanne prepare for a future when Cartman won't even let her hold down a job? It's not like he's exactly a hard worker either. This is where Cartman's behavior and string of bad decisions can really bite him in the ass. Leanne's solution being Cartman's worst nightmare. She adopts poor little orphan boy Scott Tennerman, and for a plethora of reasons. Not only does Scott offer to help around the house and pay some bills with an after-school job, immediately winning over Leanne, but maybe she thinks Scott being in the house will actually be good for Cartman. In her eyes, Scott is an upstanding older brother figure that Cartman can learn a lot from, having some kind of male role model to look after, and she feels like it's the least she could do for both Scott and Eric after keeping their relation a secret for so long and Scott lost his parents, something she may feel responsibility for. Of course, Cartman shitting bricks the entire time. He knows Scott is planning something diabolical, but isn't sure what. Is he going to kill Leanne and turn her into chili? Is he going to poison all of Cartman's favorite snacks? Or even a third thing! Cartman's losing it with his paranoia cranked up to a 10, and the whole time Scott is just sitting back and enjoying the show, ruining Cartman's life just by being there. At the very least, we'd get a funny-ass episode out of this premise, and at the most, there's a few episodes to work with here. I'm not saying it has to be one continuous story, just different Cartman versus Scott scenarios until their living situation hits a breaking point. I think it'd be even funnier if, throughout all of this, Cartman does manage to actually appease Scott and successfully reconcile with him, leading to the two teaming up and wreaking havoc all over the town in the name of brotherhood, bonding over their mutual hatred for pretty much everything and everyone Cartman already holds grievances with, except maybe Gingers, I don't know. The best scenario for Cartman's ops suddenly becomes the worst scenario. I think you get the vision by now. Scott can be used in so many ways beyond what the show has given us. Controversy be damned. Just reintroduce the basics in an episode and go wild with it. I definitely think my desire to see Scott again goes hand in hand with my love for 201, but at the same time, part of the reason why I love that episode so much is because of the brother reveal, and again, it's just too good of a reveal for the show to never do anything with it again. Maybe that's just me though.
Put a chicken in and make her name it gay!
Cartman's dreams of woke Hollywood taking over his life seem to have some validity to them, as glitches in the multiverse causes him to swap places with his diverse counterpart, Eric Cartman, but a black woman. Meanwhile, the adults of South Park had to come to terms with their over-reliance on others to get tasks done around their house, as handymen quickly elevate to the 1%. Now, I really like joining the Panderverse. It's not perfect, but it's pretty much what I expected. Prior to its release, and even after its release, a lot of people believed this would be an epic takedown of woke media. Though I was skeptical since it was Cartman who was critical of it in the first place, and Cartman's almost never in the right, though you can easily cherry-pick clips to leave out the parts where Cartman is clearly portrayed as in the wrong, because who's gonna look into context? not me. Sure enough, the special was a bit more nuanced than that. Cartman was indeed a stand-in for the chronically online who, in Cartman's own words, lazily well on woke stuff all the time, but Matt and Trey's true feelings on the matter come through both Kathleen Kennedy acknowledging her own faults and the words of Stan and Kyle. Kathleen admits they're rehashing the same movies over and over, but justifying it with diverse casting to combat bigotry is lazy, and arguably careless to those who really cherish those stories. Though in all reality, she really doesn't have much to do with Disney, she just works on the Star Wars side of things, so I think they chose a prominent female figure who is targeted on the internet a lot to really drive the point home. With Stan and Kyle, they're personally affected by diverse Cartman because, well, they know Cartman, so it's weird for them to see him in a completely different body. They argue that it's different from something like Miles Morales because he's his own unique character with an original backstory. Personally, I can see where they're coming from because people are tired of reboots in general, and I get how changing recognizable parts of a character can be jarring. And make no mistake, being a fat white kid is a very recognizable aspect of Cartman's character, as Kyle reminds us throughout the special. But we can't ignore that these are superficial differences, and that by the end of the special, the kids do recognize that diverse Cartman is still Cartman at the end of the day, after witnessing her whole scheme to play Baldur's Gate 3. Even if they felt like it's not Cartman at first glance, diverse Cartman is the exact same at her core. Make it that what you will. I don't care for any Hollywood remakes or reboots on principle, but as someone who's black and always had a smaller pool of characters who looked like me growing up, I also don't care if Ariel is black. Sorry. If you feel differently, cool. I don't watch these movies anyway. But the fact I saw people saying stuff like, oh, a black mermaid isn't realistic is honestly laughable. She's a fucking mermaid? Just don't watch the movie. If you don't like these remakes or these casting choices, then just speak with your wallet and don't see them, instead of going to bat online with the most insane conspiracy theories and mental gymnastics. Executives simply want to make money, and they believe diversity sells. It's really not that much deeper than that, although the redhead erasure is kind of weird. My only real beef with this special is that they designed all of these diverse versions of the characters, only to not really do much with them. They didn't go hard enough in this regard. I would have loved to see them interact with the main cast. The handyman subplot was amusing, but I really would have liked to see some of that screen time go to more of the multiverse shenanigans instead. And speaking of the multiverse shenanigans,
I keep having the same dream. Everywhere I look, people are being replaced. Why would I be having visions when I'm a diverse woman?
Instead of doing any real work, I used the Panderstone to the point that it became unstable.
I swear, the multiverse is just an excuse for lazy writing.
Shorts! He's not wearing shorts!
Universe 216B. A world where men are all diverse women. And all women are also diverse women. Besides the moms, I guess. I don't know. Taylor Swift is still white. Don't think too hard about it. A world where all kids are played by adults thrice their age and are taught about female exclusion in the male patriarchy. In this world is a small town named South Park, where you can come on down and have yourself a diverse time. Friendly diverse faces everywhere. Humble diverse folks without temptation. Like Cartman, Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and... who is that, Clyde? Tolkien... Butters? No, that's Butters, We should take a second to figure this out. Over the weekend, Paramount Plus dropped their first South Park special for the year. Not much year left. We getting a Christmas special or what? A special that created the exact amount of discourse you would expect from a title like that. Cartman dreams of a parallel universe where everyone's a diverse woman, and he believes that it means that Disney plans to replace everyone he knows and loves with diverse gay women.
Put another gay diverse woman in it, make it more fucking lame.
After some multiverse hijinks, Cartman ends up swapping places with his diverse counterpart, a black woman who also goes by the name of Eric Cartman. Our Cartman finds himself in his worst nightmare, as he's trapped in a world full of pandering with Kathleen Kennedy. But after she reveals the truth of the Panderstone and its effects across the multiverse, her and Cartman actually come to an understanding.
I guess just wailing on woke stuff all the time is pretty lazy too.
And they're able to return home, thanks to a B-plot that I think most people ignored whenever it came on and looked at their phone instead. But I was laughing. Personally, I dug this special. It was pretty much what I expected, much like the discourse that followed it. But while everyone else is fighting over if the episode was a bigger own on Disney or Ragebait YouTube channels, universe, I want to take a deeper look at Universe 216B. As not only do I want to point out who's who, but I also think there's some details that flesh out this world while servicing the episode's commentary. I love when South Park goes the extra mile for stuff like this. It's a big reason why I think things like Good Times with Weapons, the RPGs, and the post-COVID specials are some of the most memorable installments in the series. It's just neat seeing characters reimagined in different aesthetics and themes without straying too far away from the show's art style. Now, you might have two questions about the diverse universe. Why is it called 216B? And are there really no men in this universe whatsoever? Obviously, 216B is a parody of absurd naming schemes in comics and common adjacent media. Like how in the Spider-Verse movies, Peter B. Parker is from Earth 616B. 216B implies that 216 is the main universe, where South Park proper takes place in. But is 216 some random number they threw out there, or is there a bit of meaning behind it? I think it actually might be a nod towards the 216th episode of South Park, You're Getting Old, an episode where Stan begins to perceive everything he sees and hears as literal shit as he turns another year older. Considering how a big part of this episode is how everything Disney puts out is terrible now, Universe 216 may be poking fun at the fact that a lot of people who are still invested in the Disney brand are grown-ass adults. And the reason why these movies feel as if they took a nosedive in quality is because we're aging out of the demographic. Now, this is coming from someone who's pretty much been checked out of Disney for a year or so, and even then, I'm only really counting the MCU and some of the new animated films. I haven't seen a single live-action remake since Cinderella, which I fell asleep watching in the theater, and I don't plan on changing that anytime soon. I'm mentioning all this to say, I do think there's truth to a lot of media no longer hitting the same once you're no longer a kid or teenager, but don't take that as me defending Disney because that mouse ain't doing shit for me, and I'm not trying to have the comments put his dick in my mouth just because I made an observation. Anyways, if there's any meaning to the name, that's the best connection I think you could make. As for the question of if there's actually any men in this universe, or they just exist as a concept, the answer is yes, they do exist. At first it's only implied as the diverse counterparts dunk on straight white men, despite there only being women around until Cartman shows up, but later in the police station, we can see that photos of a bunch of men are hung up on the corkboard of wanted people. I'ma keep it a buck, this corkboard is consistent across other episodes and the RPGs, but I like to believe they chose not to update it with women for this special to lean into the idea that men are targeted and oppressed in this world. Makes sense if this is Cartman's worst nightmare. Here, men are a minority. I know this isn't saying anything new, but visually, the 216B takes on the characters are actually pretty rad. Kenny being the clear fan favorite, but what else is new? You can tell the artists on the show had fun with designing these characters, incorporating signature color schemes and character traits into their appearance, while still satirizing modern fashion trends and a habit of over-designing characters and costumes in newer media. And, you know, we're pandering. Throughout the special, we become familiar with diverse Cartman, Stan, Kyle, Kenny, and Butters, with Cartman getting the most characterization, which is Cartman without the anti-Semitism, because then Matt and Trey would have had to make her a Kanye fan. I also think making her a Baldur's Gate 3 addict in particular was pretty on the nose. As for everyone else who didn't get much time to shine or wasn't directly named, let's do a little bit of roll call. And props to Vivella over on Twitter who did a whole thread on the Panderverse counterparts. It was a nice thread to double check my homework with. Surprisingly, diverse Tolkien is pretty absent for pretty much all of this special. You'd think they would have done something with the black character whose name literally used to be Token, but it is what it is. That being said, if diverse Tolkien is in this special, it might be the chick with this purple and gold color scheme walking outside the window of City Woke. This girl in red with a blue scarf around her neck might be Clyde, as she matches his color scheme, although I have a lot of questions on how they got this from this. The curly-haired girl wearing a blue blazer with yellow hair clips is certainly Craig, and I'm almost positive this girl with red hair is Tweak due to the stress line under her eye, alongside the green top and blue pants. There's been a lot of speculation on if Jimmy is the girl with the yellow turtleneck or the girl wearing shorts and a crop top with a flower in her hair, and I'm pretty sure it's the latter. Not only are the bright colors of her clothes closer to Jimmy's, but she's also way more prominent than Turtleneck in the school scenes. Someone whose design is pretty attention-grabbing. Not to mention they made her legs look super strong, which is an obvious contrast to Jimmy's. At first I thought Timmy was left out from this special, but I actually think he may be the Asian girl with the red glasses and orange jacket. It fits his color scheme and this might be a stretch. She's one of the few students sitting on their desk in the classroom, whilst being the only one sitting on a bench with her friends later in the special. Both could be a nod to his wheelchair. But an even bigger surprise is that the goth kids are also in this special. The goth girl with red hair and eyeshadow is clearly meant to be Pete, the girl with vitiligo is Michael, and I've been racking my brain to figure out who the girl in green with the gray hat is, but I think it actually might be Ferkel, aka Georgie. Their hairstyles seem to be the only ones that match up, and you're either on the goth or theater kid pipeline if you're rocking the Oppie hat. This girl wearing light blue and red is likely Kevin Stoley. If anyone cared about him, I really don't. As for the girls, thick thighs save lives might be Wendy judging by the color scheme. The girl with dyed blue tips matches Leslie's color scheme to a T. Brown hair and gray shirt might be Bebe as they have similar hair texture, and her red makeup might represent Bebe's coat. And finally, this girl with a red beanie and purple coat is definitely red. Add another to the list, boys! As for the adults, diverse versions of Garrison, Steven, the cops, Jimbo, Ned, and Mr. Kim all appear, but we can also spot cameos from Mr. Mackey, Father Maxie, and Mephisto. Oh, and this is clearly meant to be Thomas. I also feel like she's meant to be somebody, but the closest character I could think of is the mayor, and I don't think that really checks out. I'm disappointed we didn't get a Randy though, and I feel like diverse Randy would be very much in your face. If there's a reason why, I think it's simply that South Park isn't made on a huge budget, and they actually got distinct voice actresses for each of the diverse characters. And they may not have had the time or money to cast another. If you find any other characters that I missed out on in this video, feel free to set the record straight in the comments. But for now, that's everything I could find, alongside the findings I could trust on the internet.
My life at school is awful because you don't let me drink hydrating sports drinks like all the other kids.
It's totally safe. Kids aren't gonna see this.
Where is it? We want bread! There's some right there! Start the car! Start the car!
Well, the problem is you guys buy your kids phones, okay? Just like you buy them all these unhealthy hydration drinks.
Drink cred or you're a piece of...
If you don't have cred, then everyone around you loses all their cred!
Well, what I really want to do is beat my wife.
Who do you work for? Who's trying to influence me?
South Park decided to end 2023 with a bang, dropping a new special that called out Logan Paul, Prime, OF, as in odd future. And honestly, they pretty much called out influencers in general, alongside themselves to an extent. And it's all due to one common denominator: kids. But as usual, they effortlessly combine their blunt commentary with hilariously crude yet clever antics that come together in a way that's very on brand for South Park.
Because I'm a sovereign citizen and I don't need to tell you anything.
God, I love Randy. I'm itching to talk about everything this special had to offer, from cred to Randy's hustle to even minors?
Oh God.
But before I unpack any of that, I need to unpack why the hell this special basically dropped with little to no fanfare. But if you don't care about any of that, just skip to this timestamp.
I can't feel my face!
Not Suitable is a special that feels like it came pretty much out of nowhere, but you may already know that it's a much messier story than that. To quickly recap, South Park Studios has a deal with Paramount to deliver 2 specials a year on their platform. This year, we got the Panderverse special during October, but for a minute, it kinda seemed like we weren't getting another special before the end of 2023. They have a track record of announcing specials at least 2 weeks ahead of time. Yet we were in the middle of December with no announcements in sight. And to make things weirder, producer and lead storyboard artist Greg Postma posted about the episode being done earlier in the month. So if the episode was already done, was there something holding it up? Well, definitely. Last weekend, YouTube started advertising the Not Suitable special before videos, playing a teaser nobody had seen before for a special we knew nothing about until this point. And the cherry on top? The teaser claimed the special was already streaming, with the description mentioning a release date of December 13th, a few days earlier in the week, let me tell you, I opened up Paramount Plus, and it straight up wasn't there. Then, after I made my video about the situation, fans reported sightings of not only new ads popping up over the internet, but physical posters and billboards around major cities like New York, revealing the Prime parody with a new release date of December 20th. That was in like 3 days. But sure enough, the special dropped on December 20th, a little bit after midnight on the East Coast. With Paramount and the South Park team staying silent on the matter, our best bet on figuring out what happened and why this special was delayed lies within the special itself. And honestly, I think it has to do with Randy. We all know South Park as a show that does and says whatever the hell it wants, and for the most part that flies on Comedy Central, a cable channel that's only become more lax over the years as more people cut the cord. Even then, South Park's had to meet the S&P halfway, although they still get away with a lot more antics than your average adult cartoon. But Paramount Plus is a different beast, mostly because they're desperate for money, and they exist on the internet, not cable. Why do these factors matter? Well, because Paramount Plus doesn't just rely on subscriptions, they're also supported by ads. If you choose their basic tier, which I assume most people would. I don't have another $12 for a streaming service, I don't know what to tell you. And if you heard of a little something called the adpocalypse, you'll know that if your content isn't deemed advertiser friendly, then those advertisers can pull the rug out from under a platform's feet and take their business elsewhere. All of this is to say, Paramount Plus is kinda bitch made. Not only have they pulled classic episodes of SpongeBob off the platform in the US, but internationally, not only is there reportedly a ton of South Park episodes missing, but they even pulled episodes of Avatar: The Last Airbender. And the only reason they're not pulled in the US is because those shows aren't on Paramount Plus yet. In my opinion, it's very apparent that Paramount is afraid of pissing off advertisers and customers because they want to be a squeaky clean family-friendly platform like Disney Plus, but they also know they can't just not capitalize on adult animation when they own South Park. And I think this is the first time those two agendas have collided with each other. This episode's B-plot is centered around Randy having an OF, and there's numerous scenes of his uncensored shaft on display, and I think Paramount tried to push back on that latter half. Come on, be real. Matt and Trey fighting with Paramount to keep Randy's dick intact just sounds like another Wednesday for them. But maybe there's a little bit more than that. I think what's most telling is how this special is being advertised now that it's released. Only one ad focuses on the OF plot, the ad that first circulated through YouTube, while everything else focuses on the cred story. My own conclusion is that Paramount got cold feet over the idea of marketing this special through its OF subplot because, ironically enough, they were afraid of kids seeing it and the implications that could have, which could ultimately upset advertisers. What happens if a family gathers around the TV for a movie night, decides to give Paramount Plus a whirl, only to get this ad beforehand? How long before parents with a stick up their ass storm social media with angry tweets directed at Paramount? So they backed down from the original December 13th release and quickly reworked the marketing campaign to focus on cred, portraying the special as more of a dig on Prime than it is a satire of OF, staying in the good graces of advertisers in the process. Granted, they kept the formerly leaked ad on their channel, so maybe they're still running it on videos, which throws a wrench in this whole theory, but I really don't know what else it could be. If you have any ideas on how this all shook out, share them in the comments. But enough yapping about this, let's talk about the actual episode. And to kick things off, I got a question for ya. Got cred? If I had a nickel for every time a South Park special opened up with Cartman waking up, I'd have 2 nickels. Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it's happened twice, right? This special hits the ground running by giving us another Cartman song that's all about cred. A new hydration drink that has ensnared the students at South Park Elementary in a vicious battle for social validation. It is insane. Cartman's fridge is stocked with all sorts of crazy flavors, and he's got a backpack rig to keep 2 bottles on deck at all times. This fucker Spencer can fit 4! Nathan obviously was going to be in his bag with this. Bro thinks he's Walter White. Tolkien's dipping his fries in cred, which honestly seems like a depression meal. Get through that, buddy. Everybody's rocking cred. It's like the thing to drink right now. Man, imagine not drinking cred. I couldn't think of taking such a colossal L at Clyde doesn't have cred?
Thanks a lot for making sure your son is the only kid in school without any cred.
Okay, this actually transported me back to grade school, and all the times I felt isolated because I didn't have the new game everyone else was playing, or brought a packed lunch on the days everyone else was eating pizza. Very minuscule things that didn't mean shit in the long run, but when you're that young, and your only responsibilities are homework and hashing out your Christmas list, that stuff weighs on you. The social aspect of school feels more crucial than any math test, and I really like how this special leans into that. It adds a charm to the show that a lot of people argue has been lost over the years. While South Park definitely hasn't shied from tackling the world today through the lens of a kid, TikTok and ChatGPT being examples from just this year, a common criticism has been that the kids kinda just feel like mini adults now. That they don't even act like kids anymore. Instead, mouthpieces for what Matt and Trey have to say. While I don't fully agree, it's a fair sentiment to have when we go from Cartman getting belittled by Randy for trying to be a cop, to the boy effortlessly becoming a real estate agent and a successful entrepreneur with no one questioning him. But I think this special manages to be a great return to form in that aspect by focusing on something that affects kids more than anyone else. This premise forces all the major players in the story to be kids who are in over their heads, which lends itself to feeling more like those golden years of the show. Yet, in spite of this vintage vibe the special has, it's also the first time the South Park crew has really felt like a reflection of Gen Alpha, because they get to show how these relatively new things, like influencer branded products, can actually have a lasting impact on a kid's social life. It's honestly really eye-opening for me as someone who doesn't have kids. But yet, reflecting on my own experiences in middle school and high school, when the internet became a bit more ingrained into everyday life, I can completely understand why these kids became obsessed with cred. Why is cred such a big deal? Why does Logan promoting it have such a ripple effect on kids to the point where they're killing each other to get their hands on it? Well, they give us the answer pretty early on when Clyde is watching one of Logan's vlogs. Side note, Clyde is logged into his dad's account, which is a hilarious detail given how a running gag in this special is that kids obviously lie about their age online and it screws with the metrics. Also, all of these titles and thumbnails had me rolling. From challenges to a giant red arrow, the team behind South Park is really locked into YouTube's current landscape. They could be watching right now. Content creators have largely replaced big name actors as role models, and they've replaced television as a primary form of entertainment. Most kids don't grow up with cable, and streaming largely prefers the binge model. Shows don't stay in the zeitgeist for too long. They have the same staying power as movies now. Nowadays, you'll watch one, see a few memes about it, and then in a month or two, people have already moved on to the next one. When it comes to entertainment, influencers have become the consistent presence in a kid's life. They're the one who are occupying kids' free time year-round instead of an ongoing television season. And it's arguably way more enticing because it's real people living these dream lives that kids can project onto. Logan's content panders to kids by targeting their common insecurities and frustrations. The feelings of loneliness, not being accepted, and being misunderstood by older generations. Now, talking about these things isn't bad in isolation. The problem arises when he slips in calls to action between his points and tries to spin product placement as solution to these issues. By the way, did you know that only -5% of you are subscribed to the channel? LeDouche markets himself as a relatable, vulnerable role model that kids can look up to, while also setting impossible standards for them to reach. I mean, just look at his state-of-the-art studio with some pretty impressive life achievements just chilling on the wall. Humble flex. He's literally dressed by his sponsors. From his headphones to his underwear, trying to appear as relatable to your low to middle class audience, while at the same time flexing your high class lifestyle, is never going to feel authentic to anyone but kids. And their takeaway is gonna be, I want to be cool like Logan. He has it all, and he keeps it pushing through the drama. But I don't have any money to get designer shoes, and I'm too young to drive a fancy sports car. But I can get my mom to buy me a drink. They sell it right down the street. Logan's the face of this drink, Logan is cool, and I want to be cool. And of course, this quickly snowballs into every kid showing off their cred, letting everyone know that they're cool, and people like Hartman overcompensating, hoping to win everyone's approval, because everyone already hated him. And I love the escalation throughout this special. Clyde buys some cred off Nathan. It's a bootleg. He tries to redeem himself by scoring some limited edition mega cred. It makes Black Friday look like light work.
Start the car! Start the car!
When they track down Logan for answers, they find out what we already knew. He was only in it for the money. He didn't promote this stuff because he truly believed in it. He promoted it because he believed that it would make him richer. He wasn't concerned about the impact it'd have on kids until the damage was already done. A theme that this special also explores with Randy. Logan, like many influencers, has made himself a vehicle for companies to push their products through. The last leg of this special feels like it's rehashing Japanese Toilet just a tad, especially since we just got that episode earlier this year, but I still enjoyed it. Clyde's stepmom Janice being the one trying to influence Clyde was a cool twist. It shows how parents kinda just leave it to creators on the internet to raise their kids for them. Before, you could just stick them in front of a TV when you needed a breather. Now you can just shove an iPad in their face at any inconvenience. And then they can just get mad at the creator when they say or do something the parents didn't like.
I just wanted to be a good influence on you, Clyde. But influencing kids these days requires good lighting and a quality microphone.
I was surprised to learn that this special didn't exaggerate the carnage that went down for this drink, at least as much as you would have assumed. Now, prior to this special, I wasn't completely out of the loop with Prime. I remember the announcement and thinking it was absolutely surreal seeing it pop up at my gym. And I tried Prime Energy before on a day where I didn't have pre-workout. It was alright, but I don't think I'd come back to it. Celsius is my current jam. Gotta die before 40, you feel? But I was absolutely clueless that Prime had this chokehold on children. But after looking into it, it makes perfect sense. I kind of assumed all the Paul Brother fans from back in the day just kind of grew up and moved on, but obviously when they age out of that demographic, more kids would age into that demographic. And now that he's been boxing for some time, it makes sense that he would capitalize on that without losing his target audience. There are more and more kids getting into fitness culture at a young age thanks to the advent of gym talk. Which, to be clear, I obviously don't think hitting the gym is a bad thing, but I do imagine you're gonna hold yourself to very high standards if you're in middle school or high school, and you're seeing a bunch of jack teens on the internet. But staying on topic, obviously the bright colors and candy-like flavors are going to appeal to kids and teens more than adults. When I first saw the billboard for this special, I thought that Cred was going to be Credigree's take on Prime, Tolkien's dad expanding markets to cash in on people who are too young to buy weed, which could have been fun. But no, it's just straight up about Logan Paul, or Logan Le Douche. But really, I think there's a reason they don't just say Logan Paul, despite it clearly being him, and mention that Prime is its own separate entity. It's the same reason why Andrew Tate popped up in this year's season finale, but was called Alonzo Fininski, or why Harry and Meghan were Canadian and never referred to by name. It's all just Paramount trying to dodge a lawsuit since, again, they're pretty bitch made. Keep in mind, it's only the celebrities being criticized that have name changes now, whereas before the show just didn't care. Plenty of influencers portrayed in this special have their actual names used, but I think someone at legal is concerned that if a celebrity has their fifis hurt, then they can't actually be called out by name. Even though celebrities, especially influencers, usually see being parodied by South Park as a badge of honor. Even Logan Paul seemed pretty flattered by this special, recreating the Cred ad pretty much immediately, and while it seems like the point definitely flew over his head, do you really think it's news to Logan that he's a douche who profits off of children? I thought that was like his whole brand. Anyways, I don't know if the kids learned anything from all of this, but Randy definitely did. So let's talk about our favorite man-child. The B-plot has Randy on the other side of the discourse, as he's inspired to start an OF after learning that Mrs. Streeble is making bank running one on the side. I love how they use a random teacher who's only had like 2 speaking appearances. Randy's become very money motivated in recent years, so honestly this episode just kinda wrote itself. From Randy's absolutely unhinged content, to the auction that had me in stitches, to him being overly critical of Shannon's content, overlooking the fact that she's getting absolutely destroyed by another man. But I mean, we know how Randy created the virus, and he told Sharon to start an OF in the first place, so I guess he gave her a pass in the name of money. Alright Randy22, I see you! Even though this subplot is mostly just great rapid-fire comedy that reiterates the message a lot, it really couldn't have come at a more perfect time given the current state of social media. As Randy tries to diverse his OF content in the hopes of expanding his audience, he ends up pandering to kids after incorporating Cred, but he denies such a correlation could even exist, since Cred says it's not suitable for children.
According to Meta and TikTok, their audience is predominantly people over the age of 22. That means it's not kids who care about Cred, it's adults who want to see my dick.
Of course, this is also poking fun at the show itself, how South Park has always been an adult animated series that happens to appeal to children through its simple art style and bright color palette. Certainly what made me a fan at 6 years old. No one has as much free time and as little responsibility as kids, which is why they make up a strong majority of the internet. Right now, Twitter is the worst it's ever been, and a huge factor as to why is the erotic spam bots and invasive OF models who bombard the replies of any popular tweet with pictures and videos of them getting their back blown out. There's even accounts that will promote models under the guise of a roast, prompting said models to reply to the tweet with, you guessed it, another snippet of content, being boosted to the top thanks to Elon's pay-to-win system. Now don't get me wrong, I love titty and I love ass, but there's a time and a place, and the replies of a stolen viral tweet just ain't one of them. Because there are kids on this site, bro, and there's a difference between promoting content on your 18+ page and promoting content under the replies of some random guy's tweet or a gimmick account that's meant for everyone. This special makes the argument that if kids are the main ones being exposed to this, then they're also the ones who are gonna be buying it. Which is really bad, because kids are impressionable and copy what they see. You know what I mean? It was a perspective I never really considered before, and you know what? I'll just take South Park's word for it. Overall, I think this is one of my favorite specials so far, right below the 2 post-COVID specials, and above Panderverse and the Streaming Wars. Although the Streaming Wars are the only pair of specials that I don't really care for. I really like how they switched up the cast for this one, giving Clyde and Cartman the spotlight, which definitely makes sense for a story like this, since I couldn't see Stan or Kyle getting as invested in Cred, although they clearly care enough to stay strapped. I adore how Randy has the big "what I learned today" speech that usually goes to Kyle, as it cements the responsibility adults and influencers have in this situation. It wouldn't have made as much sense for one of the kids to have the big speech. And from a production standpoint, this special was crazy. Although we didn't get any spectacular redesigns for the characters this time around, the team really went the extra mile during the big store stampede and its aftermath. And I love how the influencers at the auction were designed in great detail, with things like the ripped jeans, styled hair, and AirPod Maxes. And I'ma just say it, the ball physics on Randy were wild. It's not the first time we've seen them, but it certainly felt like the boldest. This was a pretty solid end to 2023, and the most controversial season of South Park in years. And there you have it, the most controversial season of South Park in years. Overall, I really enjoyed it, and I'm hoping season 27 continues this trend of each newer season being a step up from the last. But as always, I want to know what you guys think. Favorite episode? Least favorite episode? Let us know in the comments down below, and keep the conversation going over on Twitter and Instagram at AwestruckFox. If you enjoyed this video, please sure to like and subscribe to the Roundtable for more great South Park content. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have a great day. See ya!